have 24 members. We have a quorum. At this time, we'll begin public comment period. Out of respect for everybody's time, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Public comment will be limited to 30 minutes per Rule 58E. Also, as a part of the record, I just wanted to acknowledge that we received written public comment from 670 City of Chicago and Cook County residents, and all of that information has been provided to the aldermen prior to today's committee meeting. Those 670 letters were all regarding decreasing the police department budget. So we'll hear from Dr. Barbara Norman, our first speaker. Dr. Norman, are you on the line?
Norman is not here.
We'll go to our second speaker, Esmeralda Hernandez. Ms. Hernandez, are you here? Going with our third speaker, Jessica Sullivan Wilson.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Esmeralda Hernandez. I'm a Little Village resident. I want to start off by saying thank you for the alderwomen on this committee who have voted no back in April to not grant the mayor emergency powers. To those who voted yes, I want you to remember that day as the day you betrayed the trust placed by we, the people who voted for you to represent, protect, and fight for the betterment of our communities, especially, quote, during unique times that demand extraordinary actions, end quote. Now I'm quoting Alderman Reilly, 42nd Ward, cited from Block Club Chicago. We needed extraordinary actions from each one of you during this pandemic or any future unique time, and not sole power from one individual. You left us to fend for ourselves. Last night, the mayor spoke at her press conference about how we need to be guided by equity. There was no equity during this pandemic for Little Village. Little Village is predominantly Latinx, undocumented, lack of health insurance, and we are mostly essential workers. We had the highest COVID cases in the state, and nothing was done until 7.5 weeks into the pandemic. We had no testing sites until actor Sean Penn's not-for-profit core organization set up a temporary site which ended their services last week. The city has money slated for COVID-19 response that today we have no exact numbers of where that money is going, and simultaneously we see extra pay spent on police overtime. Many people now, on any given day, we can witness egregious acts of police misconduct by a police force that many now believe, and I believe, should be defunded. Why is our money being spent on beating up citizenry? Example, Chicago Police Board President Guillaume Foreman. And why isn't that money being spent on properly funding our Black and Latinx communities that have been hit the hardest through this pandemic? I challenge each one of you today to take extraordinary action by doing what the CARES Act was designed and directed to do, to provide for those most in need, to the communities most in need, and not to fund police. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. The next speaker is Jessica Sullivan Wilson.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Sullivan Wilson, and I'm before you today as an organizer, a former educator, and a resident of the 4th Ward in the Hyde Park neighborhood. And I speak to you from a place of privilege and access to the opportunity to have the information necessary to address this body in this forum today, and the flexibility of the job that has allowed me to work remotely. I live in a building at the corner of Hyde Park Boulevard and Woodlawn. Our building is about 60 units and made up of usual Chicago students, lovely Black elderly ladies who picked us to go to church on Sunday by family members, and youngish adults like myself who are either single, married, or have small children, and essential workers. Rent is, for me, is $1,400 each month for a one-bedroom apartment. I've seen so many of my neighbors move out during the middle of this pandemic, and I've seen posters in this building organizing tenants to come together to talk to the management company about freezing the rent. While the city has played hot potato with the state in terms of who has the power to stop the collection of rent, management companies like Hyde Park Properties still want their rent due by the first of the month. And the only solution that is offered is a payment plan that charges a service fee for you. 83,000 individuals applied for rent assistance in the city, and yet only 2,000 got some financial assistance. Yet the city has chosen to make an investment in increasing the policing on the west side of the lakefront trail. Communities have come together, not just in my building, but elsewhere in the city, through mutual aid networks that have been formed and are continuing to be formed throughout neighborhoods like Bronzeville, Hyde Park, and South Shore to address everything from food insecurity to healthcare access to rent. These networks have stepped in to catch those most vulnerable, the undocumented, the elderly, the immunocompromised, and those who've been pitched into unemployment. As we phase into reopening, there are still jobs that won't be coming back due to various circumstances, and there are still essential workers who are making less than the living wage. And to examine how you spend and how you continue to spend that $1.13 billion that has been entrusted into your care as a legislative body, I urge you to look to the communities instead of policing the lakefront. Look to the communities that have been disproportionately impacted, not just by the COVID-19 pandemic, but the pandemic of systemic racism, the pandemic of disinvestment. Look to the mutual aid groups, invest in those mutual aid networks that are already investing in people. Figure out how to increase the amount of funding and get real rent access and relief to folks. Put your money into the community and not into the continued systematic over-policing of these Black and brown communities like mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan Wilson. Our next speaker is Sam Toyer from the Illinois Restaurant Association.
Good morning. Again, this is Sam Toya. I'm President and CEO of the Illinois Restaurant Association. Thank you, Chairman Dahl, members of the committee, for allowing me to provide public comment today. The IRA appreciates Mayor Lightfoot and the City of Chicago's action to allocate CARES Act funding across Chicago's 77 communities. And we are fully supportive of the ordinance. We recognize that in order to further combat COVID-19, we will need targeted support and relief for our healthcare professionals, housing system, neighborhood businesses, and more. The restaurant industry has been one of the hardest hit sectors of the economy during this pandemic. Sales are down 80% across the board. We estimate that more than half of the city's 171,000 food service employees are currently laid off, and 20 to 25% of restaurants will never reopen. Business owners and their team members need any form of support they can get right now from the city of Chicago. Additional small business grants, housing assistance, job training, and mental health services are all aspects of the ordinance that will benefit thousands of people that work in the restaurant industry. Enhanced funding for COVID-19 direct response will also help to keep our city's residents safe and healthy as we gradually flatten the curve and reopen our economy. I would like to see the restaurants open in phase 3.5, but that's another subject. I also want to thank the committee for their ongoing work to provide essential services and government functions during extremely challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toyer. Our next speaker is Claiborne Wade from Kids First Chicago, the Parent Advisory Group.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Dow and members of the committee for allowing me to speak today. Again, my name is Claiborne Wade, and I'm a part of Kids First Chicago, the Parent Advisory Board. I am the father of 4 children who attend school in the Austin community. Chicago Public Schools recently announced that 93% of students have digital access. I worry that this high number may lure us into complacency while it is not reflective of the reality on the ground in many of our communities. A recent report by Kids First Chicago and the Metropolitan Planning Council showed that over 100,000 children in the city, including 8,000 in Austin, lack broadband internet access at home. Most of those children are CPS students, and the majority live in the neighborhoods on the south and west side of the city. Some of the 93% of student CPS sites may have been logging into their accounts on their phones. Clearly not a suitable means for conducting online learning. And many families do not have enough devices for all their children. And others may have internet that does not support multiple students trying to learn on multiple devices at the same time. While I commend CPS for trying hard to make up the digital divide that exists in Chicago, we still have a long way to go to ensure that all of our students have true and equal digital access. If we expect them to be able to learn from home in the next school year, CPS and the city have the next couple of months to ensure that all students have reliable access to the internet and enough devices before the next school year begins. I think the city has a unique opportunity to invest in expanding broadband internet access to our families who are most at risk of falling further behind during this crisis. Let's not let this moment pass without making the most of this opportunity and investing in the futures of our children. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. Our next speaker is Ed Coleman.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. My name is Ed Coleman. I am the president and CEO of Westside Forward. We are focused on the economic transformation of the communities of West Garfield Park, East Garfield Park, North Lawndale, Austin, and Humboldt Park. And today, it's not only the economic transformation, but it's the economic survival of those communities. We're talking about communities that have been hit by a triple whammy that includes not only COVID and the economic unrest that occurred over the past couple of weeks, but the fact that we're talking about communities that have been disinvested in for decades. I'm here in support of the Together Now relief fund that's been proposed that would definitely apply to these communities and help these businesses that have been shut down or boarded up, assist these businesses in rebuilding, and that's necessary. Without these businesses, a lot of the local residents don't have anywhere to go for their staples, their pharmaceuticals, their foods, etc. The businesses need to exist. If they don't exist, these communities will be even more disinvested in. And I know that's a situation that no one wants to see. So thank you, and I appreciate it, and thank you for allowing me to speak to you. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Our last speaker is Frankie Payne. Frankie Payne. All right, this concludes the public comment period. Before we go into the matters before the committee, other matters before the committee, I see that Alderman Reilly, Burnett, Cardenas, and O'Shea have joined the meeting. Alderman, would you like to be counted as present for the purpose of the forum?
Yes, Alderman Reilly, I would like to be, Madam Chair.
Alderman Cardenas, absolutely.
Alderman Burnett also.
And Coleman.
Alderman O'Shea, yes.
Okay.
And Alderman Cardona. Chairwoman, you're on mute.
Yes. So thank you very much, Alderman Reilly, Burnett, Cardenas, and O'Shea. To Alderman Cardona and Coleman, thank you for attending this meeting, although you're non-members of this committee. We appreciate your presence. So the first item before us today will begin with the monthly reports. Approval of April 20th and May 2020 monthly Rule 45 reports for the Committee on the Budget and Government Operations. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Can I get a motion to recommend approval of the reports by the same roll call vote as applied to determine quorum?
Don't move. Alderman Scott.
Motion made by Alderman Burnett, hearing no objections, so ordered. Item number 1 on the agenda, from the Department of Planning and Development, an ordinance concerning an allocation of $1,750,000 in Neighborhood Opportunity Fund to grant it to the Inner City Muslim Action Network for the redevelopment of the property located at 1207 through 1211 West 63rd Street in the 16th Ward. We have with us today Robert Bumpers from the Department of Planning and Development to explain the ordinance and to share the presentation on the screen. Mr. Bumpers?
Good morning, Chairman Dowell and members of the Budget Committee. For the record, my name is Robert Bumpers, Financial Planning Analyst with the Department of Planning and Development Financial Center Division. I am here today to request your approval of a redevelopment agreement with Inner City Muslim Action Network, or IMAN, for the purpose of developing an approximately 7,000 square foot healthy market grocery store. The agreement will authorize the use of up to $1.75 million in Neighborhood Opportunity Fund large assistance. The Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, or NOF, provides financial assistance to catalytic development projects on the city's southwest and southwest side. It leverages the growth of the downtown business district to benefit our neighborhoods most in need by using downtown density bonus to fund new commercial and cultural projects to drive equitable economic growth in our neighborhood. The goal of the NOF large program is to provide grants between $250,000 and $2.5 million for larger scale projects that will reinforce and create neighborhood commercial corridors so that residents don't have to leave their communities to have a cup of coffee, shop for groceries, or dine with family or friends at a nearby restaurant. The project is located at 1207, 1211 West 63rd Street in the 16th Ward and the West Inglewood community area. This map shows the exact location of the project at the southeast corner of 63rd and Reilly. IMAN proposes to develop a healthy marketplace that will serve as a model of the ideal corner store and respond to a pervasive community need. This effort was informed by a series of resident surveys and focus groups hosted from August 2016 to May 2017 that helped inform this new decision. IMAN is a community organization that fosters health, wellness, and healing in the inner city by organizing for social change, cultivating the arts, and operating a holistic health center. Currently, they operate a network of 42 corner stores across Chicago's south and west side, and each strive to improve the community relationships and provide neighborhoods with healthier options. This project will include new HVAC, roofing, and facade improvements, as well as providing healthier food options to better serve the neighborhood. The estimated total project cost is approximately $3.9 million. The developer's financial contribution to the project is a combination of equity and debt totaling 25% of the total project cost. Other funding will come from grants via the Builders Initiative, the Kresge Foundation, and the State of Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, totaling $1.4 million. DPD supports this project because it will bring a vacant building back to use, provide a much-needed healthy food option in the community, and help catalyze further activity along 63rd Street. In addition, the project will create 23 construction jobs and 7 full-time equivalent positions for the operation of the marketplace. IMAN will also comply with all the city's construction compliance requirements and anticipates exceeding the requirements for MDEWD. The community, as well as Alderman Coleman, who is here today to express strong support for the project. I am also pleased to be joined by representatives from the MOD. Thank you for your consideration of this request, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bumpers. I see that Alderman Curtis has joined the meeting. Alderman Curtis, would you like to be counted as present for the purpose of the quorum? Alderman Curtis? All right, we'll keep moving. We'll turn, if there are no questions, I'd like to have Alderman, I'm sorry, Alderman Moore has a question. Alderman Moore.
Thank you, Chairman Dow. No, it's not a question, but to just really highlight my support of this project. Yesterday, we in housing passed another ordinance for a man in terms of helping with the development in our community and putting these young men that they work with to work with. I'm excited about this project is that very thing that we passed in housing yesterday to help fund that, these are the young men that's going to be working to build this store. And so holistically, Eman has been working to put together a great infrastructure to help rebuild our communities, not from a brick and mortar standpoint, but from a human capital standpoint. And for that, I am so excited about, and I support this project because although it's directly in the 16th ward, we live in a neighborhood and in the community, and this impacts all of Inglewood. So I'm excited about this and looking forward to development to come even further south down Racine as we do this. So I'm definitely in support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. Alderman Coleman, this is in your ward, so I know you're quite proud of this accomplishment.
I'm overly excited for this project. I just have to say, in light of everything that is going on in our communities, especially on the south and west side, that on that Monday, on June 1st, that Iman and the participants were the only ones that were actually not boarding up, but they were actually continuing on the construction and the build out and all of the work that they were doing on that Monday. I think it was probably the only construction going on Monday, June 1st, when our communities were impacted. And that just really shows the commitment and dedication that this organization for the past 20 plus years have contributed to our community, and really the mission and the integrity and values of this organization. So I'm so honored to have a grocery store, a market with the model of for us, by us, not only in Inglewood in the 16th ward, but that will impact us all, as Alderman Moore said. So Dr. Rami, Nasha Shibi, and Iman, keep up the great work.
Thank you, Alderman Coleman. And after you started speaking, we had some other hands raised. So call on Alderman Curtis, followed by Alderman Moore. Alderman Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I'm sorry, this storm is not my internet out. It keep on going out, so I apologize. But I do know work with Armand for many years now. I've been over to the location. They do awesome work in the community. So I really support their work and also the build out for the grocery store.
Thank you, Alderman Curtis. Would you like to be counted as present for the purpose of the quorum?
Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too just wanted to rise in support of this ordinance and speak to the excellence of Iman. I have firsthand knowledge of the amazing work of their staff, of Dr. Rami Nashibi, or Rami, as everyone in the community knows him. I've always been impressed by their work that strives to engage multiple communities in unity. And they're going to bring that perspective there to this community. Alderwoman Coleman, I want to congratulate you on this work. and know that Iman's going to be doing some amazing work there. I'm jealous, and I'm very happy for you and happy for the community.
Thank you, Alderman Rodriguez. Alderman O'Shea.
Thank you, Chairman. Stephanie, I just wanted to congratulate you through this difficult last few weeks to see a beacon of hope and something positive in a community that so needs something. I applaud your hard work. Congratulations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman O'Shea. Alderman Burnett.
Yes, I would be remiss if I did not congratulate Alderman Coleman and also Rami and Iman for the great work that they do in the community. I remember years ago, this brother, he challenged all of the Arab store owners to respect the community, respect the African American communities. He's a good brother. He has a good heart, and he's doing a lot to inspire and motivate the people in the neighborhood. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Alderman Burnett. Alderman Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know this person, but I know how challenging and difficult it is to get a grocery store. So I just want to congratulate my colleagues and say good job, because we need it. We need it in our communities. And so I think this is a good project, and I'll support it.
Thank you, Alderman Harrison. Okay, I would like to add my congratulations to Alderman Coleman and to Rami and Iman for this excellent community project. I've known Rami for many years, and I'm glad to see him still in the trenches doing what's good for the community as a whole. So I just want to congratulate Alderman Coleman and Rami for this work. And I would like a motion to recommend approval of item number 1.
So moved.
I didn't hear that person say.
So moved by Rodriguez.
Okay, moved by Alderman Moore. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The due pass recommendation of this ordinance will be reported out at the next city council meeting on June 17, 2020. Congratulations, Alderman Coleman. Item number 2 on the agenda is from the Office of Budget and Management, an ordinance concerning an amendment to the annual appropriation ordinance year 2020 within fund number 925 for the Department of Public Health and the Department of Transportation. Do I have a motion to accept the substitute ordinance by the same roll call vote as was applied to determine the quorum?
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Mitts to accept the substitute ordinance. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The substitute ordinance is now
I'm mute again, Chair.
okay, I got it. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The substitute ordinance is now before the committee and will be explained by Budget Director Susie Park of the Office of Budget and Management. The department representatives are also available to answer specific questions as they come up. Budget Director Susie Park.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Dowell and Vice Chairman Silverstein and members of the Committee on Budget and Government Operations. Thank you for allowing me to come before you today to seek approval to amend the 925 grant ordinance in order to appropriate $1.13 billion in various funds that the city has received.
Excuse me, Director Park.
Yes. Oh, Chairman, you're on mute.
Is it possible to make this presentation a little bigger?
Better?
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. So the total appropriation request is $1.13 billion. This is inclusive of 13 grants, 9 of which are CARES Act funds for $1.13 billion. We have 3 new non-CARES Act grant funds for a total of $414,000 and 1 carryover grant fund for $313,000. In terms of the CARES Act funding, we have 9 grants across 8 programs. And all of these grants came in through the CARES Act, which is specific funding to respond directly to COVID-19. So as a summary, we have $470 million to the Coronavirus Relief Fund. We have $376 million through the Federal Aviation Administration. This is where there's two separate grants. One is for Midway and one is for O'Hare. We have $189 million for the Epidemiology and Laboratory Capacity Program. We have $46.7 million for the Community Development Block Grant. We have $23.7 million for Emergency Solutions Grant, $15.9 million for the Community Services Block Grant, $6.5 million for the Area Plan on Aging, and $1.5 million for Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, for a total of $1.13 billion through the CARES Act. I do want to take an opportunity to talk through that, many of these grants are restricted in use and have been designated for specific purpose or population by the CARES Act and by the federal funding agency. So you will see here, there are asterisks here, and just to go through quickly, the FAA funds do need to go to the airport. The Epidemiology and Lab Capacity Program is a grant from the CDC that will be going to the Department of Public Health, and it is specifically for health initiatives for this response, which includes contact tracing, testing, lab capacity, and personnel. The ESG program, which is through HUD, is specifically for homeless services. The CSBG program is from the state, and it is a negotiated award where there are different initiatives that have been agreed upon with the state. The Area Plan on Aging is a program that is specifically for our seniors, and HOPWA is the other program that is specifically for housing opportunities for persons with AIDS. So I did want to call that out and the breakdown between what is discretionary and essentially non-discretionary of this grant program. Just quickly going through, the airport assistance again is $376 million. It is all going to the Department of Aviation. It is broken down with $82.3 million for Midway and $294.4 million for O'Hare. These funds will be used for operations, for debt service, as well as for concessionary relief. The $189 million coming from the CDC is going directly to our Department of Public Health. Again, this is for contact tracing, laboratory testing, and testing of and personnel. Of this now going through investment areas, there are 3 different grant programs that will be going for homeless services for a total of $39.6 million. All of these funds across these 3 grants will be going to the Department of Family and Support Services. 23.7 of our ESG award, which is the whole award, will be used for rapid rehousing, homeless prevention, and other homeless services. We have 7.3 of our CDBG program, which will be used for homeless shelters, outreach, and drop-in services. And we have 8.5 million of the CSBG, which will also be going to emergency mental assistance and homeless services. We also have $35 million that will be going to the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. This is all for different services and assistance for our small businesses. We did already announce the $25 million, and this is being funded through the Coronavirus Relief Fund, as well as another $10 million small business microgrant program, also from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. We now have $24 million for housing assistance. This will be going to our Department of Housing. We have $20 million set aside through the Coronavirus Relief Fund for rental assistance. We have $3.5 million for mortgage assistance and $500,000 for legal assistance for homeowners facing foreclosure. All 3 of these funds are coming from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. We have $11 million going to the Department of Planning and Development for the Community Healthcare Infrastructure Program. Both of these projects are coming out of the CDBG program. We have $4 million set aside for the Auburn Gresham Community Health Hub and $7 million for the North Lawndale Surgical and Ambulatory Care Center. We have $10 million of investment going for workforce assistance, which is various programming in response to COVID. All of these funds will be going to the Department of Family and Support Services. They are coming from 3 separate pots, 4.4 from the CDBG program, 2.4 from CSBG, and another $3 million from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. We have $10 million that will be going to the Department of Public Health, all for street outreach around our violence prevention program. We have another $10 million going also to the Department of Health for mental health services. This is also all coming from the CDBG grant program. This will be broken down between $4 million for building outpatient mental health services in highly impacted areas, $1 million for ACT and CST services for serious mental illness, $2 million for community connections across Chicago, $1 million for suicide prevention, $1.5 million for community mental health workers, and $500,000 for behavioral health services for people experiencing homelessness. We have another $10.5 million going to the Department of Family and Support Services for our senior assistants. This is also broken out between 3 separate grant programs. The Area Plan on Aging, which was the award for 6.5, is broken down between $2.5 million for senior services, as well as $4 million for home delivered meals. We have another $2.3 million coming out of the SBG, also for home delivered meals, as well as $1.5 million from the CDBG program for home delivered meals. In addition to that, we have another $4.5 million for food assistance, also going to the Department of Family and Support Services. 2.3 is coming from the CSBG program, 1.5 is coming from the CDBG program, and then we also have $555,000. Actually, that one is actually going. That part is actually going to the Department of Public Health for a link match at farmers markets. We have $5 million for the broadband initiative that will be coming through our office here at the Office of Budget Management. This initiative provides internet access to students who are currently without connectivity. We have $1.5 million for the Department of Public Health. This is also for housing for persons living with HIV and AIDS. We have $259,000 going to the Department of Family and Support Services for human services, and this is to assist COVID-19 impacted individuals and families that are in need of access to a wide range of resources. We have $207,000 for domestic violence, also going to the Department of Family and Support Services. Again, this is specifically to meet the increased demand for the domestic violence hotline. And lastly, we have $403 million of direct COVID-19 response funding that will be coming through my office here at the Office of Budget Management. This is broken down between $30 million to meet the FEMA Public Assistance Match. $40 million will be a hold for any summer and fall resurgence of COVID-19, as well as $333 million, which will be directed for ongoing COVID-19 response costs. And lastly, I did want to go quickly through the 4 programs here that are non-CARES Act funding that are within the appropriation ordinance before you. We have 2 grant programs for the Department of Public Health. $313,000 is a carryover grant from the U.S. EPA. These funds will be used to provide support to conduct inspections to underground storage tanks for compliance. We have additional funding also for the Department of Public Health of $60,000 from the U.S. Health and Human Services. This grant will allow CDPH to continue to promote CDC recommended screening for and treatment of STDs among priority populations. We have $268,000 for the Chicago Department of Transportation. This is funding that is coming from city colleges for the resurfacing of Adams Street from Dayton to Wood. And lastly, we do have $86,000 in new grants coming to the Department of Family and Support Services. This is specifically from the Illinois Department of Aging and will be used to conduct census outreach efforts to reach older persons 60 and over. So that is a summary of all the grant programs before you today. I know the appropriation ordinance does divide that up by department, but this gives you a whole view of it broken down by investment. Chairman Dell, I can turn it back to you.
All right, thank you, Director Parks. Alderman Villegas has joined the meeting. Alderman Villegas, would you like to be counted as present for the purposes of the quorum? Alderman Villegas. Okay, we'll continue. We'll start with questions from committee members, starting with Alderman Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do have a couple of questions. My first is around homelessness. I know that the Chicago Continuum of Care has put forth a proposal regarding expedited housing initiatives. And I think it's their proposal is around $22 million in government funding. I'm wondering if what we presented here addresses or fully funds that expedited housing initiative. And just to give some color, that would provide immediate housing for 1,750 people experiencing homelessness.
So Alderman, this is Lisa Morrison Butler. Thank you, sir, for asking the question. What you have before you today would fund roughly 1,250 units of housing for rapid rehousing. There is, however, considerable money in the budget also for rental assistance, which is another of the really important initiatives that DFSS funds. So we see housing through two lenses as it pertains to homelessness. We try to stem the flow of people into homelessness by funding a rental assistance initiative, and then also on the back end to help support those coming out of homelessness to get into rapid rehousing. So that is the way that we are currently funded as of the dollars that we have before us today.
So Commissioner, are you saying that of the 1,750 rapid response that the Continuum of Care was proposing, that we're at 1,250?
I'm saying that these funds, yes, sir, would theoretically support 1,250 folks into housing.
So basically, you came through with like 2/3 or 3/4 of their ask, if you will.
Yes, based on the dollars that we have before us today.
Yeah, and I did notice that rental assistance went up from $12.5 to $20 million. I believe that's what I got in the latest note. Could someone talk a little bit about that?
I would like Commissioner Navarro to talk through the program.
Sure. Good morning. Good morning, Alderman Rodriguez.
Good morning.
So we are modeling and kind of scaling up from the much smaller amount that we rolled out in March for this. And so I can walk through a few things that we're contemplating for that. We anticipate that we would reopen an application process through our online portal, and all of the previous applicants from the first round would be entered into the new pool. They would not need to re-enter, but it would be open to others as well, and then would be selected again through a random lottery. We are working on a new document upload system being provided by AIS, and we put in a request for that system last month. It's nearly complete, and that will allow us to move much more quickly than we were able to with the first round of funds. We do anticipate for this volume that we would need to bring on some temporary staff so that we can, in fact, move the money under the deadline, which is by the end of the year. We are contemplating larger grant awards. Last time we were at $1,000. That was much earlier in the whole pandemic. And so at this point, what we're contemplating is perhaps having 3 different levels: $1,500, $2,000, or $2,500. Based on the applicant's reported rent, the aim being to cover as close to 2 times the applicant's monthly rent as possible, but with a cap at $2,500 each. And we do anticipate that we would once again partner with community-based organizations and that for a portion of those funds, so that we are again able to work through relationships with people who are working on the ground and are reaching out to folks who may not be able to reach us through an online portal. So we anticipate that with some admin costs, we could serve a minimum of about 7,500 households and more, of course, if not every applicant needs the full 2,500.
I'll have some more questions on that, but I'm sure my colleagues will have some as well, so I'll move on. Thank you, Commissioner. Just on the violence prevention dollars that are going to the Department of Public Health, I know I thought I saw Dr. Already on the call. Are these additional dollars, or are we just paying down what we've committed already to violence prevention?
Well, I will clarify that, and then I'll send it to Dr. Wadi and also Norm Kerr, who is here from the violence prevention team. All of these investments are on top of what we've invested for 2020. So whether it's mental health, violence prevention, our homelessness and housing initiatives, this is all above and beyond to meet the increase due to COVID.
And if you could, and if we can get some depth on what that's going towards, I think it's street outreach.
Yeah, this is Allison. Can you mute that? Can you hear me okay? So yes, this is additional dollars, and it is again towards street outreach. We're in conversations with Susan Lee and her team about the details of what that will look like, and I know Norm is on if they want to add. But we've certainly seen where we think about COVID, we want to work. We've used a lot of the folks who've been doing the street outreach work related to violence prevention to also make sure that we're getting COVID prevention messaging out at the same time. We certainly want to continue thinking about those in tandem, and it offers an ability to expand that. Similarly, we want to do everything we can to decrease stress on our healthcare system. And so a lot of the violence prevention type work that can actually decrease the number of people who need to seek healthcare because they are victims of violence, also in turn helps protect our healthcare system from the excess that we've seen related to COVID. Norm, I don't know if you want to add any additional details there.
Thank you, Dr. Awadi. I just want to add that since the pandemic started, outreach has done a shift, well, really a pivot to include work around addressing COVID. So our teams have been deemed exempt by the city, by the police department, to continue working in the streets. And what they've done is they've engaged individuals who have been out. So many of the individuals have been hanging out that the police have been dispersing. They've been providing information around COVID about staying inside. To these residents, we've developed a series of public education materials that have been some developed for the highest risk population, so those who are still involved in violence. We've seen that violence did decrease because of COVID, so there was still a need for the engagement of this higher risk population. So in addition to the violence, really becoming public health workers to help address COVID as well. So this is something that we want to see continue, expanded into the areas that we're currently in, but also into a few additional communities as well.
Okay. Moving on, Chair, I wanted to talk about the COVID-19 direct response area and the ongoing direct COVID-19 response costs. I think this $340 million represents 30% of this overall allocation. And I'm not very clear about where that's going, what ongoing means.
Sure.
And particularly, I know a number of us got, maybe 10,000 emails regarding, allocations towards the police department. I'm curious as to what percentage of this is towards police previously and moving forward.
So to answer your last question, Alderman, nothing is allocated to the police department. So what these funds are, when COVID-19 began, we had no funds in our corporate budget, obviously, to spend on that, as that was not appropriated. So one of the things, but what we ended up having to do due to the emergency is that we have borne all of our COVID-19 response costs on the corporate budget. There are two main grant programs, funding sources that will help relieve that off of the corporate budget. This includes our FEMA public assistance. So that was the first pot of money that came in when the president declared the disaster. And as you may know, I talked about that at one of the March, I believe, council meeting. That is for direct response costs, it's a reimbursement, and it's from FEMA. In addition to that, we did receive this funding from Treasury of $407 million that is also to be used for direct COVID-19 response costs. So one of the things that we've been working on is, really deciding of all the stuff on corporate, which includes both non-personnel as well as a lot of personnel costs and time and effort that we've had around COVID-19. Figure out what goes to our FEMA public assistance pot and what is eligible there, and then what is eligible on the coronavirus relief fund. A lot of these are all incorporated, and what we're trying to do is reimburse back these costs so that every COVID cost that we have incurred is moved off of corporate. So, the difference between that is, a lot of our direct response, some of the PPE, our McCormick Health, the alternate care facility, those types of costs are reimbursable through FEMA, and we are working through that. The other portion that is coming through the coronavirus relief fund are some of our reopening costs. We have benefit costs, teleworking costs. We have a city that has never teleworked. We have to get that up and running, so all of those costs are eligible on the coronavirus relief fund. And then the biggest thing, and the biggest difference that's also available on the CRF is straight time. So all of the time that our entire city essentially has dedicated, and we had to redirect a lot of departments. I think almost every department participated in the response. All of that time can be reimbursed through the coronavirus relief fund. So those costs are ongoing. The other thing I would like to remind everyone is that the coronavirus relief fund goes from March 1st all the way through December 31st. So one of the things that we had to do to kind of see, what is it and what is the bucket that we kind of need to have ready for the response is, what do we think the effort and if there was a fall resurgence, which you see here of the 403, we have 40 million kind of on hold for, if this came back up in the fall, we want to make sure that we have enough resources and funding to address that. So the FEMA public assistance money that we also have will end when the president declares that the emergency itself is over. And so, we anticipate that at any point. And then that source is no longer available. And then, anything that the city has to do in terms of direct COVID response will need to come out of the coronavirus relief fund. So, a lot of that breakdown of the 333 million is what we assume the staff time that we know across every department who were redirected to respond to COVID-19 is some of that cost. And then what we think that ongoing cost is going to be through the end of the year. So, we have a lot of departments that have participated, almost all of them, in this response, and so there are a lot of personnel costs that we are incurring for that.
And do we receive a breakdown?
I can put that through the chair of kind of what we think our estimate is, and all the departments that participated.
That would be important.
Actually, that was asked for yesterday.
Yeah.
That was asked for yesterday, Director Park, so I'm expecting that is gonna be part of your end of the day, information.
Yes, I will have that to everybody.
Yeah, I have a major issue voting for this, considering 30% of it's, we don't have clarity on. Chair, I have two quick more questions.
I'd like you to take round two, there are a lot of.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask for, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Alderman Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, a couple questions again. I want that breakdown as I mentioned the other day. One of the things that's mentioned here, and you mentioned in the briefing and then on the summary, that there's no personnel being added on these different grants. Is that correct, Susie?
I do think public health has one, but the CDBG and a lot of our other ones do not have personnel on them.
So all of this work is going to be contracted out then, correct?
I will ask some of our commissioners. I think there are some delegate agencies that are opposed to do some of this work.
Alderman Thompson, Lisa Morrison Butler, and so sir, in the case of DFSS, as you know, we do most of our work through the delegate agencies that we fund, and so yes, sir. In our case, if we think about money going to support the shelter system, when we think about money for rapid rehousing, a lot of that work we will be able to do in partnership with the delegate agencies that we fund. So in our case, that's our plan, sir.
So then my question is, how is that going to be handled? Are you doing RFPs?
No, sir. No,
There's
sir.
no RFP.
No, because I have those delegates. Those delegates are in place. There are contracts already in place. And so the fastest way for me to get this money on the street would be to go through the contracts that I have and do an amendment so that we don't lose any time with the RFP process itself.
Okay, and that's fine. So that'll all be disclosed who it is
Yes, sir.
you're dealing with. My concern, Commissioner, was especially in mental health. As you know,
All right.
where we work together, we've got a large population. Making sure that whether it be rapid response or whatever work is going to be done, that those resources are coming to help a lot of our folks that are homeless in my ward as well. And that's what I was trying to get at the other day, and what I want to make sure where those resources are being spent.
So one of the things that's so wonderful about the work that we've done in really, really close, unprecedented, the closeness of the partnership with CDPH. And so one of the things, if you look at the detail that I think the budget director shared, for instance, under the health umbrella, there is $500,000 specifically for behavioral health supports. And so we look forward to being able to continue the close partnership that we have shared over these last 100 days. It's really quite striking how closely the departments have worked to deliver not only traditional shelter and the supports that we are known for, but to really then begin to lean heavily into the mental health aspect of this with support from CDPH.
And thank you. I'll just chime in at a high level there that the in addition to that 500,000, there's another $1 million here for the ACT CST services for people with serious mental illness. That is the ability to send teams out to people who have serious mental illness, are not able to keep appointments and otherwise access clinical mental health services. And we're working hard to make sure that people who are experiencing homelessness are in that group for the outreach. So we are really using the opportunity of some of these COVID funds to think about people who are at risk, extra risk for COVID, because people with serious mental illness also have the serious physical illnesses often and put them at risk for COVID. This is in addition to what was allocated in the original corporate budget for that same kind of outreach work for people with serious mental illness, and we are working closely with the FSS on alignment there.
Great, and I think that's fantastic. I do have a question that just as it relates as Commissioner Butler mentioned, to get it out on the street, we want to make sure we get it out quickly. But is there a uniform sort of matrix that we're going to have to measure the effectiveness of this work, so that the funds that the work that we're doing, how we can measure not just for DFSS, but for all of the departments? And I guess maybe that's to Ms. Park, if that's a question, do we have something that you're going to use to measure that?
That's a good question. I think all of these different grant programs, and like I said at the onset, they're all very COVID related. And so we definitely have had a lot of discussion on how we kind of baseline this. And then to show, here was where we started, here's the increase due to COVID, and here's how we have helped. So that is a good point. We have an auditor that we are bringing on to help with all of our CARES Act funding. That we're actually also funding out of the Coronavirus Relief Fund to help with some of the documentation and the work. And to your point, Alderman, it's probably a good idea to maybe set some outcomes. But each of the grant programs also do have different requirements that they are requesting as well. So we want to make sure. So to your question, if it's uniform, that I'm not sure, but we have had discussions about how we kind of show the output from all of these CARES Act funding and report that out.
You're right, I appreciate that, because these aren't sustainable. These are one-time grants.
Absolutely.
So like, I think Commissioner Morris-Butler mentioned the AIS, to upgrade the system. I think that's a great use. I think it was you that mentioned that's great because it's a one-time. And finally, my last question is, in looking at all the programs on the weekly report,
yes,
where we have the corporate fund,
yes,
and then we have the two aviations, O'Hare and Midway. Why isn't the water fund part of that?
So they have actually just submitted our Their costs directly may be borne on corporate, but we've had discussions if we should start separating that out into its own fund too.
I know we have to be sensitive to the cost allocation, but I think it would be only fair that it's a separate fund and that funds its operation and that should have it allocated separately.
Yes, we've had those discussions. Thank you.
I think, one question you were gonna get back to us is how much money we've already received. I know FEMA and Treasury gave us 470 million. But what have we received so far in FEMA as far as reimbursements?
So we haven't received any. We just got the grant agreement 2 weeks ago to start putting everything online. So one of the things we're doing right now is, if everything passes and when the CRF is appropriated, we are starting to move everything off corporate into the appropriate bucket, and then we will start submitting everything for reimbursement.
I look forward to us getting reimbursed for what we've already spent, and these programs going forward prospectively, to have transparency and make sure we have everyone knows where it's being spent, how it's being spent, and then measuring it, I think, is going to be great. No further questions, Chair. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Alderman Thompson. Commissioner Butler, would you weigh in on the measurement question that Alderman Thompson asked? How do you currently look at that?
So for each program model, Chairman Dell, we do have outcomes. And so all of the contracts that are in place, there are outcomes associated with them. So what I can do is share through you what those outcomes are that we are tracking for the specific program models. There's a number of them. And so that would just allow folks to understand how we measure success. I am intrigued by the opportunity to maybe share that detail also with help. The truth is, over the last 100 days, what we've been really trying to focus on is just making sure that we were really aggressively managing the potential outbreak of COVID in the homeless population. So I haven't had those conversations yet. But we can definitely do that, and I think it would be possible then to track our outcomes and have health track their outcomes and to be able to share that information with the council.
Thank you. And I would ask Dr. Arwadi, you don't have to respond, Dr. Bennett, to, provide the same kind of information on performance measurements that you currently use.
Happy to.
All right, Alderman Moore. Alderman Moore. Moving on to Alderman Ramirez Rosa.
Thank you, Chairman. The question that I have, again, relates to the ongoing expenses. So that is all coming out of the discretionary funding?
That is coming out of the $470 million from Treasury.
Gotcha. And that is under the umbrella of the discretionary fund?
Yes.
Thank you. And I guess the issue that I'm having is that is just such a big chunk. If I'm doing the math correctly, it's upwards of 70% of the discretionary funds that the city has available to us, which is really the money that we can use for things like rental assistance. And I obviously understand the necessity of having to pay for, personnel time that was used towards COVID-19 response, and I obviously see how that can help us with our looming budget gap as we move forward here. But I have a concern that, so much of that money may in fact be going to police overtime. And it's a decision that the city makes as to whether or not we're going to spend that money on police overtime or we're going to spend it on things like rental assistance. So I know you promised us a breakdown, but do you know now how much of that would be going towards police overtime?
None of it is going to police overtime. And Chairman, if you let me share the screen, I do have a quick PowerPoint that I can kind of go through the departments if you are okay with that, Chairman.
Yes, I think that would be very helpful.
Here we go. So for everyone can see this, so I do want to take 5 seconds because I do think there's some questions around the coronavirus relief fund. So really, the whole response is really, outside of these specific program investments, is broken down between 2 grant programs. It is the FEMA Public Assistance as well as the Coronavirus Relief Fund. The difference between the two, one is coming through FEMA, and one is directly tied to the declaration of disaster. And if you see on the FEMA public assistance side, it's very specific towards emergency response. So management control and reduction of the immediate threat to public health and safety, emergency medical care, medical sheltering, a lot of the hotel and sheltering costs we've done, purchase and distribution of consumable PPE. And overtime is on the FEMA side. It is reimbursement based and 75-25 cost share. So one of the buckets that you see in our coronavirus relief fund is for the cost share because normally we would have to match it with corporate, and because of the Treasury made a ruling that we are allowed to use the coronavirus relief fund for the match, we are able to match our FEMA with other federal funds. On the coronavirus relief fund side, it is administered to the Department of Treasury. The rules there are that there's necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to COVID. It could not have been accounted for in our budget, which none of our COVID costs essentially are. It must be incurred between March and December 30th of this year. And then the big point and the difference between the two here is that costs incurred for substantially different needs, such as cost of personal and services were budgeted in the budget, but due to COVID were diverted to a different function, are allowable costs on our coronavirus relief fund. So here are some examples and a breakdown of the two different ways we are using these two different buckets. On the FEMA public assistance side, it is PPE for first responders and city staff. Our whole McCormick Place alternate care facility operation is coming out of FEMA. All of the costs we've incurred setting up and managing our emergency operations center is coming out of the FEMA pot. We had to cleaning and disinfection supplies for a variety of things coming there. Like I said, our isolation quarantine costs and then overtime for various departments. On the coronavirus relief fund, what is not allowable on FEMA but is allowable here, and we do have these types of costs, are PPE for general distribution. So the cloth masks that we're distributing to all aldermen, that has to come out of the coronavirus relief fund because it's not allowable on FEMA. Expenses to improve telework. Again, I mentioned earlier, the city who, for as long as we've been in existence, has never teleworked, had to figure out how to telework an entire government operation in 2-3 weeks. So all the costs, the Zoom costs, the telephone conference call lines that we had to up because everything crashed, all those costs are eligible here on the coronavirus relief fund. COVID testing and contact tracing, which generally is not allowable on FEMA, we can pay for out of coronavirus relief fund. Everything we're doing around recovery, also not allowable on FEMA, is going to have to come out of this coronavirus relief fund. Any reopening costs that we've incurred, to get the facilities ready, temperature checking, all of that stuff is coming out of this fund as well. Disinfection of public areas and other facilities, so our libraries, our payment centers, all of those, again, coming out of this fund. And then again, the biggest thing is payroll costs for public health, public safety, healthcare, public health, human services. All of these, which we have diverted due to this emergency, are all coming out of this coronavirus relief fund. So what is included in the direct COVID-19 response costs? I know I've got those questions. Again, they are used for a broad spectrum of costs that we've directly incurred on the corporate fund due to COVID-19. These again are, teleworking, recovery, COVID, cleaning. We've had to increase our insurance because, when we opened the alternate care facility, we're not in the business of running a hospital. So we had different insurance costs that the controller had to work through. The auditor that I talked about is coming out of here, and any additional benefit costs. That's one of the things we're working through, whether it's an increase in workers' comp, some of the other benefits, sick time, all these things that we, because of COVID, that we had to, make certain decisions on, is also reimbursable from this grant program. In terms of straight time and personnel, I just want to share the breadth of the number of people and the personnel and salary time that is eligible on this program for the city's cost of what everyone was working on during COVID. So, again, just some examples of all of the departments that were participating is, housing, IG, and DKs were all reassigned to help with isolation and quarantine. We had the library staff that we had assisting in food distribution. We had the procurement department that kind of turned and focused on, getting these emergency contracts and helping with how we're, purchasing different things. My whole team was diverted to help with all the finances and you know, all the financial work and budgeting around this event. You know, DHR had to, we redirected them because they had to come up with all new workforce policies around, you know, working from home and all of these things around COVID. AIS has been completely diverted to really, you know, work through all the facility management, how we clean them, each time there was a COVID case, you know, working with housing and everyone on the shelters and managing all the McCormick alternate care facility. Again, BACP was redirected, you know, to help develop small business programming and administering all the rental or all the loan and grant programs for small businesses. Of course, we have CDPH, DFSS, and MOPD are all focused on providing all the necessary response for our most vulnerable residents. We had OEMC and CFD who, you know, were huge in this response around, you know, all the EMS, and OEMC of course was the incident commander and ran the event. We currently have city personnel that are all redeployed to help with contact tracing, and we will have more city personnel who will help the Park District as we reopen to help with social distancing. So what does that equal? You know, so if we just say broadly speaking, you know, a lot of the work that we're going to do with our auditor is really drilling down person by person of our entire city staff and pulling the right documentation. But at a very high level, you know, broadly speaking, for all of those departments, every city staff that we had working on the COVID response, we say 75% of their time for just the March and April, where we had to completely, it was all hands on deck with just salary, is $100 million of city time that we spent on COVID. If we make different assumptions for the remainder of the year, so that's, you know, May, June, all the way through December, and it's not going to be 75%, of course. We know it'll be 50, and then sometime maybe it'll go down to 25. You know, we made certain assumptions that maybe it'll pick up a little bit again if there was a resurgence in the fall. You know, we can easily assume that there's another $211 million of potential personnel costs that will be diverted to helping with the COVID response. Again, you know, actual reimbursement will be based on personnel records, which my department is diligently working on tracking and verifying all of our time. But, you know, with the potential for the disaster declaration to end at some point, ongoing COVID response, so, you know, some of the things we're doing will continue all the way through the end of the year, and definitely salary time that right now is on the corporate budget. You know, we will, the approximate, where we got that $333 million is from all of these assumptions. So hopefully that's a little helpful. Thank you, Chairman Dahl, for giving me 5 minutes to just kind of briefly go through that.
Director Park, can you get this out to every alderman?
Yes.
Yes.
Alderman Ramirez.
Thank you so much, Chairman. So my follow-up question to that is I appreciate that breakdown. And I appreciate the distinction between overtime coming out of FEMA public assistance and then the straight time payroll costs coming out of the CRF. So if I'm clear then from the presentation, no FEMA overtime money or no straight time payroll cost money from the CRF are going towards Chicago Police Department pay.
I cannot say that for a fact. You know, the police department may have legitimately incurred a level of overtime. That is one of the things we're working through. You know, departments have to code if it was COVID related, and we're going to audit those. But they may have had, you know, actual overtime that's COVID related that will be eligible.
Gotcha. And for the CRF, is the same true for CRF? So some of this $333 million that is coming out of the CRF for straight time payroll costs, some of that may go towards CPD.
Some kind of, you know, part of the justification that we're looking for, you know, I think CPD is a little bit harder because of their, you know, their normal daily activity and kind of how we code. You know, fire's a lot easier because they are doing ambulance runs, and we know, you know, for the most part, you can presume that a lot of that work was around COVID. I think police is a little bit more difficult. So, you know, honestly, I can't say definitively no or yes at this moment. Because there is we'll go through.
Thank you for that. And so for the $100 million for the past 2 months, that was used to calculate and extrapolate out towards the $333 million, how much of that 100 million came from CPD?
Zero. None.
Zero.
So we get to 333 million without the police department.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I mean, I would appreciate if we could get just the math behind that 100 million, the breakdown there, just so that we can sort of see what departments are, dedicating time towards COVID-19 response in terms of straight time payroll costs.
Yeah, and it is really all the ones I talked about in my deck. We pulled just payroll. This is not even including benefits for those departments. So I'm happy to share that.
Okay. And then for the purpose of the record, I just want to state that, I think that the 20 million in rental assistance is entirely too low. If you look up how much the average rent is in this moment in the city of Chicago, it's reported in some places that as of May of 2020, it's $1,956, which is a 5% increase from last year. I am heartened to hear Commissioner Navarro speak about the increased amount that households will be able to receive. Certainly with a rent so high, the average rent so high, I'm sure many families will need that. But I'm disappointed that it will only be approximately 7,500 families. We have so many families that are in need of this rental assistance. Our city has failed to provide them with other forms of civil relief protection, like more time to be able to pay their rent. And so certainly I would hope that, with this discretionary money, we would have been able to, do more. But it is what it is. I didn't write this, but I just wanted for the record to reflect that, I wish that we could have done more for our families in this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Wagstack.
Thank you, Chairman Dow. Susie, I know you just went through some of those numbers there for the 211 million, and I'm just wondering, when you're looking at the $40 million that you're setting aside, we just saw today that 10 states had a huge resurgence in cases, and that was shortly after opening, I think within 3 to 4 weeks. So do you think that 40 million is going to be enough with set aside in case we have a huge increase? And based on kind of what we did with McCormick?
That is a good question. What we had early on was kind of starting from zero to where we are today. I think there are some things that we have in place, whether it's some of the teleworking, some of the PPE. We're continuing to work on that incrementally so that, when the resurgence happens, we are not, I think when initially early on, because it came on and we saw it kind of coming in from the Gold Coast, things were picking up. And we were really starting from outside of public health, who I know is always prepared for this. All of our other departments, we were kind of starting from zero. And so I think I can't tell you right now 40 is enough. We're hoping it is. I think we are moving forward and pre-prepared for hopefully the second surge, but we definitely want to make sure we have enough set aside to not be caught flat-footed.
And then we would have to spend that before the end of the year, essentially, right? Okay. So if there's not a huge resurgence, likely going to be, we could plug it into spots that we need to before the end of the year.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. And then how much different are we from other cities in terms of spending some of these funds? I understand that you and the CFO were talking about other cities, I believe, maybe CDPH.
So we have been talking to other cities. I think they're all kind of in the same boat, where what the difficulty is around, especially for direct response costs, that we just don't know, and we want to be prepared. But they are spending it similarly. I think a lot of them are covering some of the personnel costs for sure, especially because of all of us. Whether it's Chicago or LA or New York, none of us budgeted for any of this. So I think, as much as we can use and leverage CARES Act funding to help cover all of these costs, we are all very much talking about that.
Okay. And then there was a lot of great questions already around, police, OT. I think you made it pretty clear. But we've had discussions about the CHA and what they're doing, and they've been kind of quiet. I've talked to several advocates about the amount of units that they have available or potentially available, upwards of 1,200. And, I know they're a little difficult in terms of how they roll those out, but have you worked with them to see what kind of funding they could get, if any, and how they could move quicker to utilize these funds to open up more units?
That's a good question. I do believe that CHA has their own pot of CARES Act funding. So I know that was brought up during the briefing. So we will, try to get more information. Chairman Dawes brought that up too, about getting more information from CHA. So we will.
Yeah, I know that's not your job directly, but they should be, really forthcoming with what kind of funds they're spending. And I know a lot of it's for cleaning and just talking to some of the residents about what they're doing and what they're seeing. But I'm just not sure like how much they're getting and if we could utilize that to open up some of those units that are sitting vacant. So that would be a concern to have there. Thank you very much. Chairman Dow, that's all I have for this round. Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Would you allow me to speak to Alderman Wagsback's point for just a moment?
You're on mute, Chairman. Chairman, you're on mute. Sound like you're off now.
Yeah, something happened to my screen, so I'm gonna fix it, and if you could just proceed, I'll be back.
Thank you, Madam. If Alderman Wagsback, if I could just speak to one of your points. Director Parks mentioned, spoke about some of the funding, but I did want to speak to the issue of CHA's vacant units because that is something that we hear about a fair amount, and I do want to talk to that. I think that it's important to understand that, in their reporting, they note the number of units that they have that are vacant and offline, and that within the vacant number, there's a huge variation within that, and so we sat down and actually gone through and audited what does that actually mean if a unit is vacant and offline? The vast majority of those units are not habitable. Those that are under rehab or coming up for leasing are either going to people coming off of their waiting list, or if it's in a site that is a right to return site, then they have people who have the first rights to come back to the location where they were previously. And finally, we do have concerns that when we look at it, I'm not saying this was your statement, but as we've heard from others about a statement saying, well, CHA, could or should be using these units to house people experiencing homelessness. Most of their one-off available units are incredibly scattered throughout buildings across the city, which is also a challenge to think about staffing that in any way, especially as part of a COVID response where we're looking at trying to help people to quarantine or to be safe in that way. So I did just want to speak to that because it does come up a lot, almost as if there's 1,200 units ready and waiting to go and they're just not being utilized. I think that's not an accurate representation just of what's actually available and how it would work.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I apologize if I didn't realize the latter, or didn't think through the latter portion of that about staffing and how they would have to manage that. So I appreciate you
no apology. It's come up a lot, and I understand the confusion because it does sound like, these are just sitting there ready to go, and it's just not the case for the most part.
Okay, thank you for
clarifying. Alderman Tulloch, a point of clarification, please.
Point of clarification, Alderman Farrell.
Yeah, with regard to the units that are available, and as the commissioner is saying that of all the units that are available, some are not available for one reason or another. Could she provide to the chair how many units are available and currently ready to be moved into?
I can get that information from CHA and get that over to the chair, Alderman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Talia Farrell.
Thank you, Chairman.
And to well, the
Your mic went off. Your mic went off again.
yes, it was to the host, whoever's hosting this meeting, please leave me alone. Alderman Osterman.
Please listen to her, leave her alone. First, budget, Chairman, I appreciate your help on this. A couple quick questions and a statement. First is a question to Dr. Arwadi regarding the money for public health now into the end of the summer and into the fall. Do you think that this appropriation will help prepare us to deal with COVID now as we get back into school and into the fall?
Yeah, I do. I think we're using the opportunity of this one-time funding to be as prepared, get everything ready, especially places where we've seen gaps. So I can speak, for example, some of the non-discretionary funds that are coming to CDPH, that epidemiology and laboratory capacity piece, that really will let us build some systems. To give you a sense, we're using very outdated data technology. It takes us about 6 hours every day just to run the daily numbers. And the ability to really put in place a lot of that digital infrastructure that lets us link up the electronic health records among all of our providers, whether that's our hospitals or our clinics, and make sure that we have the things that we need to have data that is as real time as possible and that we can act on. That's an example of something structural that we're working to have in place now. As you know, my team tries to think ahead at all points, and so we've built right into this everything that we need for vaccination campaigns down the line, both our flu vaccination campaign and then a COVID vaccination down the line. And so I feel good about the way this is set up in terms of making sure that we've got structures that meet our needs right now, but that we're being sort of conservative enough, and importantly, having the structures, personnel in place to let us respond, because COVID is still going to be here. Even if we do not have a surge, we're still going to have, cases in schools and in churches and in workplaces. And my job at the health department is to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place to manage that. There are individual one-off cases that we don't see significant spread. So I think that the way we have this set up should put us in a good place to do that.
Okay, that's a question that myself and my colleagues are going to continue to ask you. We have a great deal of confidence in how do you help manage this with the mayor to get us to this point. But I think as we look at forecasts of the summer and the fall and an increase, I think we want to make sure that we're asking those questions to give you the resources that you need.
Thank you.
A question to Commissioner Morrison Butler regarding the homelessness allotment. Commissioner, the 7.3 for shelters, is that to, I'll call shore up the shelters that we have in place now, in addition to looking for additional shelters? And for my colleagues, some of the shelters are overcrowded and had to be spread out during the crisis. So I guess the question, Commissioner, is that money used to look for additional shelters around the city?
Alderman, the primary focus of that money, Elisa Rodriguez is on the phone, so she can keep me honest on this. The primary focus of that money is to be able to maintain those alternate sites that you just sort of hinted at. So as you said, a number of our shelters, not all of them, are congregate. And these are places where people are just sleeping in really big rooms on cots that are fairly close together. And so to embrace the CDC and CDPH distancing guidelines, we needed to move beds from that existing footprint into another place so that we could space people appropriately. We want to maintain that decompressed and spaced out system for at least 6 more months. And that decision was made in consultation with our colleagues from CDPH. So maintaining that alternate site footprint there are building costs, staffing costs, food costs, laundry. There's a host of things that go into maintaining those alternate sites. So the majority of that pot that you just referred to is literally thinking about maintaining those sites which are separate from our existing shelter footprint. There is some money in here to support existing shelters, but most of it really is around maintaining that decompressed footprint for at least 6 months.
So that's a conversation that we'll have more with our colleagues and you about, just because I think given that COVID's going to be with us for some time, and we're going to need the shelter infrastructure around the city, as you know, is shaky to start with. So trying to make sure that we've got a solid plan in place that has the resources for the shelters and can handle the capacity we have now and in the future is, I think, something that we want to partner with you on. So that's something that we could talk more about. The question on the violence prevention, the initial allotment for this summer, I believe, was $10 million. Is that the right number? I think went through public health. So this would be a total of 20?
Yes, Alderman.
Okay. And the last comment relates to the rental assistance. I appreciate the chairman's support and the budget director increasing this number to 20 million. I wish the money was more, but I think the need outlined across the proposal is something that I understand. I think for my colleagues to know that we are working with the state to try to get additional money. The state, when they were in session, passed a $396 million allotment that's statewide. And we as a city will be looking to see what we can do to get money that we could use for rental assistance for our residents. So that's going to be something that we have to work on. But I think the need is significant across the city, and we want to make sure that people have safe housing during COVID and beyond. So that's something that I'm committed to working on with the budget chair and others, including the Commissioner of Housing and everyone else. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I see that Alderman Tunney, Alderman Villegas, and Alderman Sawyer have joined the meeting. Alderman, would you like to be counted as present for the purpose of the quorum?
Oh, yes.
Alderman Tunney? Alderman Villegas? Okay, moving on, Alderman Sadlowski Garza.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is in regards to the rental assistance. So, Commissioner Navarro, will the people that, you said the people that already applied, their applications will already be available, or do they have to reapply altogether?
Thank you, Alderman. Our thinking was that people would not have to reapply, and that in fact, even if someone did receive funding in the first round, given that that funding amount was $1,000, that if they were selected again, they would be eligible only for the difference, minus that $1,000 that they already received, and then could be eligible for the new amount. Simply because we didn't want to penalize people who were selected at a time earlier in this process when it was a lower dollar amount. But anyone who applied previously would not need to apply again. We would simply open it up so that others who didn't, or maybe didn't have a need or didn't apply last time, could do so now.
So what is that amount, what is it gonna be? Are we gonna use the same protocol where it goes to community organizations and then they're gonna distribute the money? And then will there be a priority put on those people that did not receive anything in the first round?
So our thinking on that, Alderman, is this is what we're contemplating, that we would continue to work with community-based organizations for a portion of the funds, so that because they served a great purpose last time in being able to reach folks that aren't necessarily going to go online and apply through our portal, who may need to work in a language other than English, who may have all kinds of needs that only that group can best meet. So we do contemplate that a portion of the funds we would continue to work through those community-based organizations to distribute, and that we would keep a majority of the funds and bring on some temporary staff to help us move those funds out the door throughout the summer and fall.
And
And
what
I'm
is the
sorry,
amount?
can you repeat the rest?
Of course, I'm sorry. What is the amount that's gonna be given per person this time?
So what we're contemplating is that, knowing that we're now much further into this than we were before, that we need to be thinking about the ability for a larger dollar amount per applicant. And that this time we would be looking at 3 different levels, 1,500, 2,000, and 2,500. So the max per applicant would be 2,500. What we're contemplating is that we would aim to cover as close as we can to 2 times the applicant's monthly rent, but with a cap at 2,500. So if it's more than that, we wouldn't cover it. And at this time, and we would be looking, in addition to to the applicant needing to provide us with proof of COVID-related income loss and proof of income prior to that loss, we would also be asking for a letter from the landlord stipulating their rent amount and so on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all your hard work. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Alderman.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Burnett.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I appreciate how you all are trying to spread this money out. I'm encouraged by the increase in rental assistance, knowing that the rental assistance is a way to prevent people from being homeless also. You know, I know we got 3/4 of the money going toward the homelessness situation from the 1,700 that the folks asked for. Hopefully, we can increase that more in the future. Also, I wanted to find out from Norm about the $20 million that you have for violence prevention. Getting calls from people that want to get engaged in that. Some organizations, are you just using old organizations? Are you trying to create new organizations? There's people out here that want to help with violence prevention. And then also with the tracking dollars, I'm actually getting emails from people with all types of backgrounds that want to see how and if they can get engaged in being a tracker.
So, Norm, do you want to start, and I can answer?
Yeah, I can start. So I do want to make a correction with Alderman Osterman's question. So it wasn't a previous $10 million directed towards street outreach for this year. It was $6 million, so this should be 16 total. And to answer your question, Alderman Burnett, so we, just so everybody knows, we identified 15 priority communities that the city has been focused on, but we are trying to expand to those areas. So we've been working with partners to really identify the 25 communities that have the highest victimization rates. So this would allow for some of the expansion to take place in some of those areas. Alderman Burnett, I know your area is one that you have concern over, and your West community is one that's in the top 25. So that's a community that we would be exploring. As far as identifying organizations, in several communities that we're going in, we haven't identified partners yet. So this is still a process that we have to work out. We've developed a criteria, like a basic criteria we want those organizations to fulfill so they could be considered. And we would get this information out to you and the aldermen in various areas to get to your constituents as well and your partners. But we are considering an RFP process because we want to make it open to potentially new organizations as well. So it will slow down the process. I mean, it's easier to use existing organizations, but we have heard the concerns that several people have around being able to be included in the process. So we want to make it as inclusive as possible.
Yeah, and as you know, Norm, this stuff gets very fluid, right?
Yeah.
People who can touch people change all the time.
Exactly.
So, some of the old people who used to touch people can't touch them anymore, can't identify because,
Yeah.
they boys, kids, right? So it gets very fluid. Norm, can you text me your number or get me your number so I can talk? Can you give me your number so I can talk to you
Yes.
offline about this? And then also need to know what the criteria are. If someone was to apply as an organization, what do they have to have? Where do they have to be? So that if we can help folks to be able to do this, I think it'll help keep more peace in our community. And I appreciate what you're trying to do. We just want to help keep people alive.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I'll get that to you today.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry for the interruption, Chairman. May I,
Thank
Norman?
you, Alderman Burnett. Alderman Garza.
I'm sorry. Norm, can you please send me your number as well?
I sure will. I can, if there's gonna be a request from others, I can send it to everybody on the call.
Chairman Dow, point of information.
Hold on a second. Norm, finish your point.
I can get it to everyone on the call, my contact information.
All right. I don't know who that was.
That was Alderman Harrison.
Alderman Harrison, yes.
Thank you. I was going to suggest that he provide through the chair his contact information as well as the list of the 25 communities or whatever the number is.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman Harrison. Norm, I mentioned 10 million. I thought that there was a portion that went to you and a portion that went to public health.
Well, the street outreach, specifically the funding that's for street outreach that we put out the RFP earlier this year was 6 million for street outreach. There was 1.5 for victim services. But the total for the office is around 10 or 11. But specifically for street outreach, we put out 6, and then this would be, this 10 million would be for street outreach as well, so that's what I mentioned, 16.
Thank you. Alderman Scott, followed by Alderman.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I had another question.
Oh, I thought you were through Alderman Burnett.
No, they was waiting on Norm about the trackers.
Trackers, I think, are, you mean the contact tracers?
Yeah, the contact tracers.
That would be Commissioner Arwadi.
Yeah, so that's related to the RFP that is currently out on the street. We're getting responses. The due date was extended to next Tuesday because of all of the civil unrest and just giving people a little bit more time to be able to get responses. That is for the lead agency, and then through that there will be a selection of up to 30 community-based organizations in the neighborhoods that have high economic hardship or are in the Invest Southwest communities. And the RFP has the details of those community areas and then individual contact tracers will be hired through those community-based organizations. So things are moving as quickly as possible. There's an expectation that that contact tracers, the first batch of them will hire in July, with the remainder needing to be hired through the middle of September. And in the meantime, of course, other city staff, et cetera, are filling in that gap.
So is there a website that we can direct people to if they're interested in doing this?
Yeah.
So we don't be bogged down in our office with these things.
Yeah, I understand. I can send out, there's the state, IDPH has a website for people who are interested in contact tracing. If people want to put information in there, they can. And then in turn, we'll be sharing those lists with the community-based organizations who will do the hiring. So I want to make sure people understand that if they put their information in on that state website, they're just identifying someone who might be interested in contact tracing. It's not a formal application for employment. But we have asked that anybody who comes in there that has an interest in being in Chicago, that information get passed on to the community-based organizations who will have the ultimate selection in terms of the hiring for their organization.
Okay, so if you can send that to the chair, that'd be great.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman.
Madam Chair, this is Alderman Villegas. Madam Chair, this is Alderman Villegas. I think you posed the question to me, and I had stepped away from the phone for a second. You wanted to know if I wanted to be counted as part of quorum, is that what I heard?
Yes,
What I was told, rather? Yes,
thank
please
you.
count me.
Thank you, Alderman Villegas. Alderman Tunney, if you're on the line, please weigh in. Okay, Alderman Scott, followed by Alderman Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alderman Burnett actually touched upon one of my questions. Just want to make sure that the information for the contact tracers are given to all the aldermen once the list of community-based organizations I identified, so that we can, folks who are interested, because I've been getting a lot of calls about that as well. Secondly, I think Alderman Wagstaff touched upon this, but I want a little bit more detail. The $40 million that will be left over, if we do not have a huge spike, and I'm sure that there will be costs that will be allocated, but if there is not a huge spike in there, is a significant portion of that 40 million that will be left, how will it be allocated, and what will we do with it?
Well, Alderman, honestly, I do not know. We haven't, my biggest concern is to make sure we have enough for the spike. So, to be honest, it's not allocated to anything else outside of potential, if we were going back to a shelter in place and, there's a huge fall, or even small, but a fall, late summer fall resurgence, that is what that hold is for.
And once we do have a spike or we do not, and once we know what we need the money for, you will come before this body and kind of let us know in detail, similar to what you did for this large portion of the CARES money. You will come back and detail that for us, correct?
Yes, I'm happy to share that. We've been, if you see my weekly reports, we have a dashboard that has started to, where we're trying to track all the costs. And I think, given Alderman Thompson's request of how we are sharing outcome, I will also, think of different ways to continue to share that information, on a daily, weekly, monthly level. And then, yes, I'm happy to share that information as we get, into the fall. Closer to the end of the year.
Great. And so hopefully we won't have to, best case scenario is the $40 million will not be used because there won't be a spike, hopefully. And if does that money, if it's not used, does it go back to the federal government, or can we allocate it towards other things, other departments that may have straight time costs or things like that? Can we still use that money through December 31st?
Yes, we can. And the deadline is December 30th. They cut off the last day of December for some reason. So, yes, by December 30th, but we can definitely reallocate that, if departments end up having more costs.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. Alderman Harrison?
Thank you. I'm gonna echo my colleagues' comments and concerns about the contact tracing. When we had our briefing on the 8th, the deadline was still, I think, this week. And that's why my understanding is why we are passing this money, the 189 million. If the deadline is extended, then my concern is that the questions that we have and the answers that we haven't gotten, the horse will have been out of the barn, and then we won't be able to ask questions again or know, which community-based organizations or what the criteria are or what they've done. We've already passed the budget. So I guess I want to know, how do you plan on addressing that, since we're doing this backwards?
So I can address that, I think. Just to be clear, there's not been any change of any kind to the RFP. There was the original deadline for organizations to submit to be the lead agency was yesterday at noon. And we had heard from organizations because many of them, of course, were involved in protests or otherwise, had a lot of disruption in their own work because of the events that they were concerned about having the time to be able to appropriately finish their applications for the RFP. And so we checked to make sure that no organizations had actually submitted an application yet to be sure that we weren't unfairly giving extra time to people. And then there was a decision to give the organizations an additional week to complete their applications. That is for the lead agency. There's been no change to the requirements that are in place for the up to 30 community-based organizations. No change to the language in the RFP itself.
Okay, so Dr. R. White, when the deadline is next week, how long do you think it will be before you reach a decision as to who the lead agency is?
So I would have to look at the details. We are obviously wanting to move on this as quickly as possible. So my guess is it would be a couple of weeks. I can get back through the chair. I can check with the team on the exact timeline. It depends a little bit in terms of how many applications we get to. I know they have there's a team that will obviously be doing all of the review, but we are looking to turn this around really quickly. So I'm quite sure it's within a couple of weeks, and I can get back if there's an expectation that it's different than that.
Well, I would like for you to brief the council members on, how many people applied, what their qualifications are, allow us to ask questions, and then once you all have decided who that lead organization is, brief us again and allow us to question them about how they plan to do their outreach and select the community-based organizations. Because there's some community organizations, I think as Alderman Burnett said, that have been around for a long time. They can write a good plan, but they can't execute. And so that's a concern of mine.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Mr. Carr, the violence prevention. I asked a question and they said you were the person to talk to. So before it's been conducted by Metropolitan Family Services, has been doing the violence prevention?
Yes, Metropolitan Family Services did receive funding to be the lead for the RFP that we put out earlier this year.
And that would be the 1.6 million?
That was 6 million.
6 million.
Yes.
Okay, and so where have they been operating?
So they're currently operating in at least 15 communities.
Okay, I need. Can you tell me those communities?
Yeah, I can. You want me to tell you them right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. West Garfield, East Garfield, North Lawndale, Austin, Inglewood, Humboldt Park, West Pullman, Auburn Gresham, Greater Grand Crossing, Roseland, West Inglewood, Woodlawn, Washington Park, New City, Back of the Yards, South Shore, South Lawndale, and Chicago Lawn. It's actually more than 15. Also Uptown and Rogers Park.
Okay, and so I'm not aware of what they're doing in Greater Grand, Woodlawn, or South Shore. So I'd like you to have them reach out. I know they've been around a long time, and I know you were saying that we need to, do something that's easy. We need to be effective more.
So in Greater Grand Crossing and Woodlawn, there's Project Hood is in Woodlawn.
Right.
Aclivis is in Greater Grand Crossing, and Claretian is working in South Shore as well.
Who is?
Claretian.
Who are they?
Claretian and Associates?
No.
Point of information.
Who is that?
They're an organization. I can get you their information.
Point of information.
Alderman Guard is a point of information.
Claretians are in my ward, and they don't work in South Shore. They work in South Chicago.
That's why I haven't seen them.
So I don't. Claretians don't work in South Shore. They work in South Chicago. So I'd like clarification on that.
Thank you for that. So, Mr. Carr, we have totally ignored the South Shore community. So I look forward to talking with you after this call to see how we can right that situation.
So I can have that call with you, but I will confirm that Claretian is working in South Chicago and South Shore.
Okay.
I have that information in front of me, and I can allow you to, I'll make that connection as well, so you can
I
see.
know what they say, but
Yeah.
if I'm not aware of them, then, I'm not sure whether my other two colleagues are aware of them, then they're not at the heart of it, because I am in the most dense part of South Shore that has the most need for violence prevention. So, I would know, and either they're lying to you, which it wouldn't be the first time, about what they're doing in South Shore, but it's not effective. Um, I want to echo my colleague's sentiment about more rental assistance. We as a city are losing population for whatever reason we are. This COVID-19 has, crushed us, the looting and has crushed us. People need help, and we need to help them, and we still keep approaching it with, oh, well, this is all we can do now. If we don't help people stay here, we won't have anybody paying taxes. We won't have anybody buying goods and services. We won't have anybody going to the restaurants. And housing is one of those key issues. So I guess Commissioner Navarro, I want to ask you, what if we upped it to 30 million?
Hello, Alderman. Oh, let me
Hi.
find the video. Sorry, there I am. Okay. Hello, thank you for your question. I will say that we do anticipate significant support coming very soon from the state as well. And so I do want us to keep that information in mind with the city dollars that we have.
All right, so let me just say this. There is not a cap, right, on what we can do. If 20,000 only gets 7,000 households, and we have more than 7,000 households in the city of Chicago, even if we upped it to 30, we would still need more assistance, even if it comes from the state. And we don't know whether it will or not. I mean, and that would just help more people. You see the turnout that happened for the first one. So, I want to push a little harder, and I'm asking my colleagues to join me in here to do more now, and then we can still do, because this is our base. This is who makes up the city of Chicago. This makes up who are the workers, who are the people that support our economy. And if they don't have homes, then we don't have anything as a city.
Alderman Harrison, just want to acknowledge that there was a significant increase in the original appropriations, actually 3 times. It increased by 3 times what was originally proposed. Wanted to acknowledge that. It went from 6.5 to 20 million.
Okay, thank you for that.
And also, if I could jump in, the FSS also has rental assistance programs that comes through a different pot and comes to us. And so I believe, Elisa, keep me honest here, but I believe that the 2 pots of money that we've got that will support rental assistance add up to a little over 10 million.
So that gets me to the 30.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Butler. And then my last question is about the relief fund and the expenses that the city is recovering for teleworking costs and everything. Will the aldermanic offices be able to submit the same?
Yes, I could talk to you offline and see
Okay.
the costs around that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you, Alderman Harrison. That last question, that was a good one. Alderman Cardenas, followed by Alderman Urban.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine is going to be part statement, part question, and this is for Commissioner Navarro. And we hear a lot about housing issues in council recently, and not just recently, but I think over the last few years. But I don't see CHA, which is known as Chicago Housing Authority, which is the authority that's supposed to be handling all kinds of housing issues for the city. So my question is that, isn't it time to reform that, and what role can you play in that? so that CHA can better reflect the needs of Chicago's housing and its constituents. They should be on a call, on this call, because the majority is about housing, and I do support my colleagues, and I'm glad that it went from 6.5 to 20 million, and I'm glad the DFSS has another 10 million. The need is great. Housing is very, very much critical in this city, to keep the peace and keep people in housing, and so the city can get back on its feet and thrive. So my question would be to you, if you could answer that in terms of CHA, and maybe reform is what we should be talking about from a housing standpoint, an agency that can take on these roles. I don't think the city's equipped to do it, to be honest with you, in the way it should be handled, in my opinion. So if you can answer that. And then on the this is for Chairman, I think, the budget on the $40 million resurgence fund. Because I did some numbers. So positivity rate is hovering around 20%, maybe a little bit less now. And if you choose the percentage of the $470 million, that gets you to 94 million. Just play devil's advocate here in terms of percentage or what the need may be if the research takes place. So you may be lowballing it, and what if the need is greater? To me, that's going to be a huge problem because we should have foreseen that coming. And I would like an answer on that, if you could.
So I can answer, or do we want to start with? I can answer that first, and then we'll go to your first question, Alderman. You are correct. I think this first round, I expect us to spend close to 120 million. So I was trying to be conservative, but you are right. It may not be enough. And that's something, as we progress into the next couple of months, if we need to kind of move between different, between that and the current ongoing costs, we will work through that. And working closely also with Dr. Arwadi. If we see a sudden spike in the next couple of weeks as we're reopening, then we will have to reprioritize, as you say.
But isn't it better to kind of give folks, especially this council, the numbers now to say, look, because I think everybody's going to understand the numbers if you're talking about positivity rates and say a direct correlation between positivity rates and also resurgence in the fall, it could be even bigger than that. It's proportional to what the cost is going to be. What you need to do, obviously, is have the testing, have the staffing, and the PPE and all that other stuff to be ready. And to say that $40 million, and again, we need housing, we need a lot of things, but one of the things to me is more of a risk is resurgence that affects the economy as we are coming out of the funk, coming out of this free fall where we're now $700 million under. And if I was to be a risk manager, I would say that's hugely important to me for this economy not to go under again if this thing happens to resurge in the fall. Mm-hmm. And if we're not prepared for that, that's exactly what's going to happen. So all the money would have thrown out the window, to me, in my opinion. So if you're a risk manager, you got to be thinking, I don't know that that's enough. I don't, the funds could be reused, by the way. It's not like we're going to suspend it, but they could be reused if it doesn't happen. But I'd rather be safe than sorry, because what if the federal government doesn't come back and give us additional support that quickly? Right. Our economy is at a critical time, and I do not want to risk it. And so I would urge you to reconsider giving us numbers that are directly related to the numbers that are out there in terms of coronavirus and this risk.
Thank you. I will. Yes. I mean, I will continue to look at that. It's a balance of where we think we're going to be, and what other funding sources we can leverage. So I definitely take your point. I will definitely look at.
Thank you.
Alderman, I can speak to your question about CHA, and it's a very understandable one. I think the fact that they're not part of this call just has to do with this being, about the budget that the city of Chicago itself received, whereas CHA has received its own allocation. For instance, they've put over, they've got separate money that they are expanding support of housing choice voucher tenants, for instance, knowing that if those folks have lost income, they're going to need a higher level of support on their voucher. So that they are making those kinds of changes. I don't have their exact breakdown in front of me, but I agree with you that it's relevant. We're working in the same geography, often with similar populations, and many times our affordable housing developments are done in conjunction with CHA. So it's a very relevant question, and I can certainly get for everyone a more detailed breakdown of the funds that they received and how they're using them, and I can return that through the chair.
I thank you for that. I think we're all blind to if they're working, if they're helping folks with vouchers, how many of them and what neighborhoods and all of that stuff. Because it is very critical to understand the whole picture of it. If everybody's just focusing on the $20 million, the $6.5 million in housing, that isn't it. That's simply helpful. That's simply an additional piece of it to help some folks. But from a long term type of thing, it's the housing authority that really gets the units and gets them up and running, gets the voucher, gets people stable. That's what it's there for. And yet we have all these discussions, and they're not a partner in this. And I know you said that you have discussions with them. They should be someone from either IGA or from their team should be there briefing the aldermen and their housing initiatives. Either that or reform the agency, to be honest with you, because I don't think it's meeting its goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Cardenas. The point about the Chicago Housing Authority has been made by many people here. The CHA certainly needs to be more transparent and forthcoming about their spending of COVID-19 funds that they receive separately from the federal government. We will move on to Alderman Irvin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Actually, a lot of the questions that have been asked have answered some of the questions that I have. One point I did that was brought up slightly that I think we need to explore. The administration and the executive branch haven't really been the only users of COVID-related stuff. I mean, many of our offices have experienced increased expenses around COVID, and I think that all of us, to some extent, have had those types of expenses. And I think we really need to look at the ability for members of council to submit expenditures that are COVID-related for reimbursement as well, because these have been borne on our regular office expenses, again, unanticipated costs that we've all had to deal with. So if that's something that we can consider out of that 300 and some odd million left, that would be greatly appreciated. Secondly, a lot of conversation around organizations and what will happen. I know that we are trying to do these things as quick as possible, but we do need a little more definition around who, how much, and what. I know that information is committed to come back to us, but as serious appropriators and legislators, I think that that's something that we all would like to know generally beforehand. But given the nature of what we're dealing with, we understand the challenge, but we, do need to see that information. And my final point, and if you can answer about the council, is when are you going to know all of the money, with the exception of the to be appropriated money, how it's going to be spent, who it's going to be spent with, so that information can be shared?
For all of this, for everything that's coming before you today, Alderman?
Yes, with the exception of the to be determined.
So I think this is a work in progress. I think at the speed that each of the department goes, I know yesterday or in the briefings, I've heard some suggestions of, if there's a dashboard or if there's a way we can share that information as it happens. I know, different commissioners have committed to briefings, but, I have gotten the feedback and I am thinking about different ways of how we can share that information with all of you in a timely manner. As it's going on, because I don't think we have a specific time frame. I think each initiative whether it's violence prevention or housing. They're all gonna have different timelines. And so, what I will think through what the best way is to get that information to everybody and how we share that.
And Alderman Urban, I just want to add to that I also envision utilizing the COVID-19 working group as a place where we can also have some of these discussions. I mean, we were planning to have Commissioner Butler come before us. I don't know if it's this Thursday or the following Thursday, and other city departments can be lined up as well as we have done in the past.
Okay, that's fair. And my final question is around violence prevention. There's, in some respects, and I think this kind of has been a theme, there seems to be some disconnect between these large organizations and what's going on in the streets per se. And there was, as I remember it, a move to create another stream of funding for some of the smaller organizations that may not write the best proposals, but can solve the problems that that we're facing. So number one, whatever happened to that? And number two, if we haven't done anything with it, will some of this $10 million be utilized to deal with some of our smaller, more grassroots organizations in the violence prevention space?
So to answer your second question first, I think that's part of the plan, Alderman Irving, is that we would be able to connect more with the smaller organizations. I mean, maybe there's some capacity needs that they may have. I mean, that's some of the things that we're seeing, and how can we support them to really be on the on-ramp to get into the violence reduction space. So we know that there's some organizations that have been out there for a while doing some things, but they may need some help with infrastructure, that type of thing. So we're hoping that these funds could help with that when we identify these groups. As far as the initial, of your first question, and I'm not sure what funds those were. The 6 million that went out wasn't for that. It was to fund street outreach expansion, and then the 1.5. Those are the two big pots that we put out. I know we've talked a lot about, the capacity building space, but there wasn't any designated funds for that work yet.
Well, that's not how I understood it when we had the initial conversation around what I thought was $7.5 million, if I remember correctly. There was to be a second round with smaller organizations that were looking for like some smaller, I don't know if you call them micro grants or mini grants at the time.
Yeah. So there is that, and that's something called a year-round fund. That is some funds that the city is putting out and partnering with the Chicago Community Trust. So that's something that will be released in June. But this is about grants in the space of around 15 to 17,000 per award, and up to 4 awards per community. So this is something that would start in October and run through May, to provide some sort of like light in the night types of activities. So that is you're right, that is something that we discussed. So I can, again, send this information out to all of you that are on the call, just to all the aldermen, period. But it's focused on the 15 communities that we initially established.
Well, let me say this. I think the community is going to need more than $60,000 or $70,000 with light in the night type activities if we're really serious about trying to stem the tide of violence. We haven't talked about any like job programs. We haven't talked about any other ideas other than activities to help these young people. So if we're talking about violence prevention, it's got to be greater than just outreach. We got to look at this thing holistically and get down to some of these root causes. Because just paying folks to go talk to Tommy when they think Tommy gonna shoot Johnny, we got to get beyond that to get down to some real stuff that these kids can use. We can't ask them to put the guns down if we don't have anything else to occupy their time or give them a meaningful path to a positive lifestyle. So And what we're finding is that some of the more grassroots, and because I see them, all the time in the community, but I also see some of these larger organizations that are, overhead heavy and not street heavy. And I think that's the challenge that we're all facing and need to see a shift in that so that we can truly have a violence reduction strategy that's going to yield some tangible results for these communities that have been, downtrodden and being shot up for years. So that's what we would like to see, or that's what I would like to see with some of these additional funds. Let's get some more money into helping some of these young people, not necessarily funding the organizations, but funding what's going to happen on the street.
I agree with you, sir.
Madam Chair, that's all that I have. Thank you
Thank
much.
you, Alderman Urban. Norm, I want to, just underscore what Alderman Urban just raised and ask you this $10 million that you're getting through this ordinance, how is that planned to be used? Is this an RFP? Is this just an extension of your, current grantees? I mean, how are you all going to handle
Yeah.
this money?
So the initial thought of it is that it would be an RFP, and there's a conversation that we plan to have with CDPH to figure that out because of just the timing and so forth. But also to answer Alderman's question even more, I mean, what I'm talking about is just part of the reduction piece. I mean, the comprehensive parts of it has to come from our other partners as well within the city. So mental health, other types of programs, et cetera, youth development. So those are things that we're aware of and trying to make that coordination happen, but totally agree.
I'm coming back to my question, Norm, which is that you said it was an RFP. So are you looking for a multitude of agencies? Are you looking for one large agency to give funds to
Yeah,
contribute?
so
And what is the breakdown between what's to hit the streets and what is to be used for administrative purposes?
So as far as the large organization model, we did that with the first RFP. The plan is not to do that for this one. So it will be an RFP process. We haven't broken down what each award would look like yet, or how many awards. So that's something that still is yet to be done.
All right, I'll take that for now. Alderman King.
Unmuting. Thank you, Chairman. A number of questions have been answered, and so I'll just highlight some that I feel haven't. Just kind of a general statement. If we could look at somehow the disbursements of funds through a Chicago lens, right? How much of the money is spent with Chicago companies, with companies of color, Black and brown companies, especially. We've referenced, accounting needs, legal needs, all types of needs, and I just want to make sure that that money is spent with an equity lens. So, is it possible to? I think it would be even powerful to look at it by zip codes, how the money is actually spent, since that's how we kind of looked at how this pandemic has impacted our communities. Is that a possibility to do that?
And Alderman, are you asking across the whole suite of grant programs that is coming before you for
Yeah.
the CARES Act? I will take that request and see how we can break that down as these funds start to actually go out. So I know we've talked about that, in our COVID committee to a smaller degree. So I appreciate that, and we will, see how we can get that information.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be, even down to looking at, just how we spend money, where we spend it, not necessarily if it's not contractual, but what communities that it actually impacts. I mean, I think we should, make sure that we do that. So I'd like to put that challenge to you and your staff to make sure that happens as it's distributed, and to make sure the departments are kind of looking at it so that we can overlay that with where the pandemic kind of hit us the hardest. In
kind of to that end, have we looked at kind of rebuilding neighborhoods and businesses impacted by COVID the most? Have we taken kind of a look at those communities and a survey just to kind of see what the needs are there? And if so, do you feel like you've kind of reached all the buckets that you need to reach in order to impact those communities?
I could start at the broad level, and I'm sure any of the commissioners can also jump in. I think, with your first question and this one combined, we are very much looking at across the board equity, how we are investing into our communities, where the greatest needs are. This CARES Act money is exactly for that. It is very specific to, where can we make the biggest impact to those areas that were hardest hit. So at the broad level, yes, that is always what we are thinking through. I think, and I'll let any of the commissioners jump in of kind of how they are looking at it for their specific programs, and how we can help, different neighborhoods rebuild around this due to COVID.
So specifically, and others can jump in too, but I'm curious about workforce and job creation. I know there's specific money that's earmarked, but where will that go? Will it be focused in these communities that were hit the hardest? Have we looked at ways to insure people? Because obviously insurance and access to healthcare was a huge part of this. I'm not sure that I see that, but I'm sure, I hope that that's earmarked somewhere. So to those specific issues, can perhaps the department heads speak to those couple of issues?
Alderman King, so there is roughly 10 million in workforce that is coming to DFSS. And so what DFSS has held on to in the workforce arena, and this is post the creation of the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership, is our department focuses on returning citizens, people for whom English is a second language, and homeless individuals who are also looking to be connected or reconnected to workforce. And so almost by definition, when you look at how those communities shake out from a racial standpoint, these are overwhelmingly Black and brown people that we serve through our workforce dollars. We would be happy to share through the chairman the list of roughly 40 workforce agencies that we currently have under contract. But yes, ma'am, we definitely intend to continue to support those communities that already had, and those populations that already had the greatest need prior to COVID and who were obviously most adversely affected. The other thing, even when you think about our homeless dollars and where those are going, the overwhelming majority of Chicago's homeless people are Black people. And so as we seek to support those individuals, both with rapid rehousing, as well as just to make sure that the shelter system is safe in the interim, those dollars are also then overwhelmingly going to people, in this case, to Black people.
Yeah, it's good to hear. And I would just reiterate, just kind of looking at where the disease, where the pandemic has hit us in terms of zip codes, and then just to, kind of assess whether, we may need to put more money here or there because of that. So
yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that.
I can chime in maybe on that. So as you know, we've been really tracking this very closely by zip code, and some of the new data systems that we've had some investment in will allow us to do that in even more real time. And the next time we have our data update with the alderman, I'll show you some new progress that we've made there. But we've been very careful, really to make sure that we're not seeing sort of part of the city do okay and then leaving out zip codes or leaving out, sectors by race, ethnicity, whatever it might be, and really pushing resources to where they're needed, really week by week. And I think we've been quite effective there. In terms of assessing needs sort of at a community level and thinking about some some of that root cause work. I would say, first of all, within that contact tracing RFP, I think there is some, it's challenging to do it this way, but we felt like it was a way to really invest in a lot of the communities with the high socioeconomic hardship, recognizing that the people who will actually be hired, we don't have an education requirement, we don't have any prior training requirement, and there is a very strong earn as you learn component to this program. So the idea is that yes, people will get hired in, living wages, but even as they're doing this initial contact tracing work, within community, et cetera, there's the opportunity through city colleges and in partnership with Chicago Cook Workforce to get additional training, build additional skills with the goal of actually turning this cohort into more of a community health worker type cohort. And at the same time, the other piece of this is actually resource hub work. So we've been doing a lot of work with patients, with contacts, saying what are your needs, right, beyond COVID? Like what will help, what makes it difficult for you to be able to maintain quarantine or isolation? Are you connected to care? Do you have insurance? Do you have food needs? Do you have, what are the issues there? And thinking about that sort of resource hub piece for social services broadly as being something that is better coordinated across the city is a long-term interest of ours, and we're using this COVID funding in a way to start, I think, being more granular there, and then be able to think at a more neighborhood-based level about what those are. It mirrors a lot of what we've done in Health Chicago 2025, where you think about our Family Connects and other work. Similarly, sort of for the mental health work especially, you'll see there too, there's a focus on some community health workers. As you know from our original mental health planning, it's about really driving investments to the parts of the city where we see the most mental health needs, and we remain focused on that when we do the evaluation, really driving dollars to where they're most needed. So it's a good question. It's something we really continue to think about, I think, every day here at CDPH in terms of investments, but also how are we monitoring that, and then trying to be synergistic in terms of investments across all of our goals, with COVID sort of as the leading edge right now.
Alderman Escarino, can you address the business head?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And so from the business standpoint, we have the loan fund dollars as well as the grants that we have been working on since the initiation of COVID, is that they have been fully dedicated to businesses that have been have been impacted by COVID. And so those dollars that are coming through the CARES Act are being focused in the communities of impact. And we are with the resiliency loan fund, there was an equity lens that was provided to ensure that we were capturing businesses across the city. And then with the recovery grant, while most of those dollars came in from donations, again, the focus has been on low income micro businesses in low income areas that had a specific COVID impact. Also, as we're looking forward in the Together Now fund and some of the dollars that are going to be dedicated from CARES, again, the focus is specific to businesses that have been impacted, many of which have not opened to date. And so we have, this has been a lifeline to many of our small businesses. Additionally, we have been working with our 100 chambers to provide us the information to continue to survey these neighborhoods of hardest hit. And we've used our chambers. They've been great partners. We have been able to provide a little bit of funding to have them support the different neighborhoods. And all the data that we're getting is we're working directly with those chambers to ensure that their information is informing the programs that we put together. We have been extremely intentional about bringing support in an equitable way, and really trying to identify and cover as many businesses that we can that would qualify for some of these programs. So that's just a quick summary.
Yeah. No, thank you for those. So I would just challenge you guys just to kind of really look at, the zip codes that were impacted and where the money is going. If I can, Chairman, I just want to echo Alderman Hairston's concern or question about the aldermanic expenses and those being able to be reimbursed as well and thrown into that pot. But also really looking at the rental needs and the business needs. I think even though we're putting more money towards those, it sounds like we need additional money to put towards those. And I'd just be curious to know from your assessment, based on, you know, applications and amounts, you should have a good idea of what those needs are. And so I guess I would ask the Commissioner of Housing and Business Affairs, what percentage of needs do you feel like we're meeting? And how much more do we need in order to kind of meet those needs?
So I'll just quickly start. Alderman, when we launched the $100 million resiliency loan fund, we know that we have capacity for roughly, and again, we're still working through that. We've already issued 13 million. As you know, 25 million went to support that broader program. But I would say the overwhelming response and the number of people that we're just unable to support, the need from the of the businesses impacted is huge. And we have always said, Alderman, that we, and for those of you that are on this call, the city of Chicago is actually considered to be a model in terms of how much money we stood up to support businesses. No other city in the country has put together a $100 million loan program. In addition, so that program had more than the number of applications that we could even cover. I think 4 times the number of just the applications. In our grant program, which we were able to put together with the help of the Chicago Community Trust, and some of the CARES dollars are going to that, a small portion, is that, again, the number of applications that we received just completely, overwhelmed.
I know it's large. Can you just, I won't hold you to this, but what percentage of the needs are we meeting? And I'm just curious. Are we at 25%, 10%, 50%? Where are we?
Well, it just depends because the different programs have a different need. But I will tell you that the need is great. And I can get you those numbers. We are compiling all those data points, and I can make sure I can work through the chair to get that the much more detailed information for you. But we are unable to cover. The federal government needs to step in and provide more PPP, as they have done so, but it's still, the need is just overwhelming. And I can get you that through the chair.
Thank you.
You finished, Alderman King?
I think the Commissioner of Housing.
Oh, housing, that's correct.
Commissioner Navarro, I asked the same question. I think those are just really where people are struggling the most, and I just want to understand how much of the needs we're meeting. So.
Yes, thank you, Alderman King. You know, what we certainly know from our first foray into this, which was back in March, that after a 5-day open lottery, we had 83,000 applicants. And we estimate that about 70,000 of those were eligible. Now, some folks, of course, also were eligible for and received a CARES Act stipend. Some folks are eligible for unemployment. So there's other ways. And if folks have a housing choice voucher, then we know that the housing authority has the funds to adjust so that they're still paying 30% of their rent. But undoubtedly, we have far too many people in the city who don't have one of those additional means of support. We don't know the exact number at this point because as time has gone on, we know that that there's been further job loss. So I think we will learn more as we open this back up in the next round.
Alderman King, DFSS, in trying to determine what the demand might be for the rental assistance that flows through us, we had asked the Poverty Lab at U Chicago to try to help us understand. They estimate that there are 106,821 households in the city that have a worker in a vulnerable occupation. And so when we think about COVID and how it has really adversely affected certain job classes and certain occupations, I think that that is an interesting number, and it is not out of line even with what Commissioner Navarro just described. It's just another data point to consider. So I think that Commissioner Navarro's understanding of the potential size of that population is spot on. It's not dramatically different than what ULabs has hinted. And then, as she said, underneath that umbrella, there would be other things that people might be eligible for.
Right. Well, thank you. And thank you, Chairman. I would say that, you know, we should kind of try and understand those needs because as Commissioner alluded to, you know, we want to be a model, but I want to come out of this, you know, as a city being more whole than not. And, you know, if this isn't a time to use our reserves, I don't know when is a time. And so making that assessment to me is important, you know, as we think about how we're going to bounce back economically and long term. And so I just want us to really look at those numbers and see where we are, because if we're only serving 10 or 15% of our community, then our long-term costs are going to be greater than these short-term costs that we're looking at. So I really want us to take a long lens and look at that. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman King. Alderman Moore.
Thank you, Chairman. Just real quick, and I sort of brought this up in briefing, and so educate me or tell me. So when I'm looking at the $5 million for the broadband initiative, and then also the 35 million, the 25 for the small business resiliency, and a 10 million micro grant. Now, when I divide that by 50 wards, you get 100,000 for the broadband, another 500,000 for the resiliency, and another $200,000 for the micro grant. I guess what I'm asking is, at minimum, can we commit to spending those dollars in each ward at minimum? And maybe not every ward needs them. Maybe you all have done something that only certain wards need them. But at minimum, if I'm dividing this by 50 wards, I have to know that my businesses are getting this money. So at minimum, can we commit to that? And if not, why?
So I can speak to a part of that. So Alderman, when we put out as we develop a program to support businesses across the city, we certainly put together a criteria, and we will be devising as a part of Together Now Fund, a portion of that where we're looking to use some of this CARE funding, is that we're going to have to devise a criteria that certainly focuses across the city in terms of need, impact due to COVID. And then we really rely on those applications that come in, and then use that criteria basis. Our goal from day one, whether it's the resiliency loan or the micro business recovery grant, has been to try to focus on areas of need and then put the criteria out and work with our chambers to ensure that they are helping us get those businesses to come through and apply. And so our goal has been to reach out and to be as present in every single community in the best way that we can. We do have to establish certain criteria for some of these programs, but that is our intention, Alderman. In terms of whether we can focus the dollars directly, I think that we can certainly have a conversation on that, but it is difficult depending on whether some businesses meet certain criteria or not. So, but happy to continue that conversation.
And I'm okay with that in terms of meeting that criteria. But if I know that if I got at least at minimum, and some areas may not even need the money, but if I know that I have at least that amount of money and people are applying, that someone has to tell me, okay, David, you gave us these businesses, these applied, but none of them even qualify for $100,000. And if so, if that's the case, we got to start looking at the criteria then. And so at minimum, when we talk about equity, when we talk about, and this is not even equity, this is more equal. I prefer the equity, but I'll settle for equal right now and saying, that from the broadband standpoint, making sure my schools get in the 17th ward at least get 100,000, and then of the resiliency and of the micro 500 and 200,000 respectfully. But definitely, I think we got to have this conversation. I support this ordinance, but I think we have to have that because too often and too many times, I know I do, and I've heard some of our colleagues as well. You go out into your ward and everybody's saying, I didn't get anything. And so it's just like anything, trying to get in unions and everything, is the criteria jacked up. And so we need to make sure we're looking at that.
Absolutely. How do we have that conversation?
Chairwoman, this is Jenny Bennett, if I may.
I was getting ready to ask for you, Jenny, because I knew you had the formula. You and I talked about this, so I wanted someone to be responsive to Alderman Moore's question.
Sure,
Just
absolutely.
looking for you.
Okay, so Alderman Moore, I wanted to just affirm for you that every ward will receive loans. And I know that that was, one of the specific requests. But also more importantly to your question about equity versus equal, we have, and also echoing Commissioner Escarino's comments, we have applied a equity lens towards this to ensure that for example, it's weighted based on population. It's also weighted based on need, low-income neighborhoods and moderate neighborhoods in particular. That we have also put a lens as it relates to industries. Happy to walk through that as well. There was some information that was sent last week that does break it down by both community area as well as by ward. And it's a lot of information. So again, happy to go through that some more.
And thank you. For the record, you did give me a call and I didn't get a chance to reach back out, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I'm always happy to go through that some more. And then in addition to that, for the broadband initiative, the broadband initiative is in large part about helping to provide accessibility to CPS students, internet accessibility to CPS students. And so we'll be looking at that on a household basis, but to your point about need and also equity, it's in large part to serve populations of CPS students who are most in need of internet access. And we're developing that criteria as we speak. We'll be back to you with additional information as we move forward with this, but that is definitely a key focus for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman Down.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. Now we'll go to non-members of the committee, starting with Alderman Beal.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. I just have a couple of quick questions. Out of the $700 million in the projected deficit, how much of that is reimbursable, or have we already exhausted the reimbursements out of that, and that is the actual deficit number?
So that is what we are looking at. As I mentioned early on, anything that we've incurred on corporate that we will get reimbursement for, we want to absolutely maximize that. So that is a number that I am working on. Like I said, we have about 90 million that we have incurred for non-personnel, and then it's a lot of the work around the personnel costs, as I've outlined in that PowerPoint I shared earlier, of how much of the straight time can we commit to one of our grants.
Okay, so the 700 is a working number. It could go up or it could come down based on what we're looking to get reimbursed.
The 700 million is an estimate of where we are right now based on our March and April numbers, which I know if you heard the mayor yesterday, our revenue loss there was about 175 million just for that month and a half.
Okay, so this is projecting out through the end of the year is what we're looking at. So it could be worse or it could be better.
Right. I mean, I think the spike, how quickly we reopen, all of those factor in. And so, this is kind of an unprecedented time where we can't really compare it to any other event. So we are doing a lot of work around that, and continue to update that every month. So we are, yes, to your point.
Okay. Do you know off the top of your head, how much were we looking to get from this year's budget out of the real estate transfer tax?
Let me see if I have my sheet. I don't know off the top of my head. I might have it in front of me. Real estate transfer. I'm gonna have to get that through the chair. I do not have that.
152 million.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. Oh yes, 152 million.
Okay. And it was that with the relief that we thought we were going to get from Springfield? That was that 152 million?
No, we, if you recall during the budget, we removed the 50 million that we did not get from Springfield.
Okay. All right. Now also, is the 700 million including the 163, 164 that we haven't received from real estate, ambulance reimbursement yet?
We are getting that reimbursement now, Alderman. So that is coming in, the supplemental payment.
Okay. How much have we gotten so far?
I will have to look at that because as you know, the state is a little behind. So I will look at that and provide you the response. But
come on, Director, we've been asking that question every week. You should know that.
But we do have.
Okay, Chairman, you didn't interrupt anybody else. Don't interrupt me.
I want you to focus on the ordinance.
I would respectfully ask that you didn't interrupt anybody else. Don't interrupt me. I'm asking you respectfully.
I'm asking you respectfully to focus on the ordinance at hand.
Okay. So, and keep carrying the water. All right. Are we looking at let's see, with the gaming bill being passed, are we looking at possibly doing some video gaming to help offset the deficit?
So all of our options are on the table now. With the gaming bill that's passed, a couple things I would say there is that we need the governor to sign it first, which she's indicated that he will. And then importantly, we are also starting to evaluate what our options are. Post-COVID, we are going to really need to just rethink a lot of how we are planning for 2021 and also the timeline of that. Susie mentioned, especially as it relates to how we reopen, the timeline of that reopening, and whether as we reopen, we see a resurgence, that will drive a lot of decisions in a lot of places, and also in particular as it relates to gaming. So more to come on that, but all of our options are on the table.
Okay, thank you. Also, knowing that we are in a crisis, how are conversations going with unions? Are we asking for unions? Are we talking with them at all about working with us?
That is on my list of many things that we are looking at to how to bridge this shortfall. So I've not yet had those conversations, but they will absolutely have to be a partner in how we meet this.
Okay, all righty. And lastly, we still are waiting on those cloth masks that we haven't received yet. What's the ETA on those cloth masks that each alderman is supposed to receive?
That is a good question, and I will look into that. I do not know, so I can provide you an update today.
Okay. All righty. That's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Laspada.
Thank you, Chairman. Really appreciate a lot of thoughtful questions that have been asked by my colleagues today. I wanted to circle back briefly on the, I know that I'm working off of a city computer. My video doesn't work. My apologies, y'all. I'll be quick. Like, my question was related to ongoing costs. I really appreciate the breakdown that we saw briefly on screen in terms of the slides from Budget Director Park. What was confusing for me is I saw what was listed. I did not see CPD on those slides, but then I heard reference to CPD costs also being budget eligible. I was wondering if you could offer some clarity around how the Chicago Police Department potentially does or does not fit into our ongoing COVID-19 direct expenses.
I think what we're working through, and even in respect to the police department is, what activity did they do around COVID-19 and is it eligible? So I think that is part of the conversations I am having with all of the departments as we are working through, timesheets and work and what everyone was doing. So to the extent that they have eligible costs, and it's something that the guidance allows for, then that is something we will work through.
So I figured that would probably be the case, and I know that they could probably come back and say that enforcing the stay-at-home order was an eligible cost, that enforcing the curfew is an eligible cost. I can tell you from literally the thousands of emails that I'm getting into my office, there's no one who is wanting to see us put dollars that we received for the economic and health stability of our communities to go into police overtime. I would feel most comfortable if the version of this that comes before the city council could explicitly state, yes, we're putting this towards a lot of important human services and public health expenses, but I would want to know that we're not going to use this to put tens of millions into police overtime costs.
Well, here's what I can commit to you, Alderman, that all of the investments that you see on this sheet is what we are proposing. Now, if the police department has overtime costs that are eligible, it will come out of FEMA, which is a pot that cannot fund any of these other initiatives, such as homelessness, rental assistance. Those are not allowable on FEMA. So it is a distinct portion of our funding. And it is absolutely reimbursement based, and it would require justification. So if that provides some information, we will not amend. Even if police had overtime costs, it will not come at the expense of any of these initiatives that are before you.
It would come out of FEMA, but it would not come out of the CRF funding?
Well, if it comes out of the CRF, and that is if, and we would have to do a lot of more work with the department to see, to your point, even if they were doing that, we'd have to figure out how to justify how and when, and the extent of that time. So, there's a lot of work around that, which is difficult and that would require time. But it would come out of the ongoing costs. Again, it will not come at the expense of any of the initiatives that we have put before you.
I understand. I would say, and then I'll cede my time. I see Chairman Osterman also has his hand up, but it is that ongoing cost that we're referring to. I think there's a lot of great work happening with the community services block grant, the CDBG, the EST dollars. There's more that we could do. I definitely echo my colleagues in asking for more in terms of rental assistance if we can make that happen. I am strongly sharing that whereas you would have to make a justification for putting CRF dollars towards police overtime, I do not see a justification that I could make to my community based on how they are voicing their perspective on this. So I would, if there is a way for us to write in that exclusion, that would be very important to me, or at least get a broader departmental breakdown written into the ordinance. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Laspada. We'll go to round two, starting with, we'll go to round two. I see two hands up for that, Alderman Rodriguez and Alderman Osterman.
Thank you, Chair.
And Alderman Mitz, I saw had returned. I don't know if she has any questions. Alderman Rodriguez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question, and forgive me, I've been in and out of the committee meeting, so if it's been answered, my apologies, but they're quick. Just around the broadband usage, I know it's $5 million. What's the intent there, and how's that moving forward?
Sure. So we're still in the process of defining the entire program, but the idea is to expand internet accessibility for CPS students through largely broadband access. In addition to that, we are also working to develop community supports to help engage households and families in this enrollment effort so that we can connect students to the internet.
I mean, what's an example? How would that happen? How would the broadband be implemented?
So broadband is, in essence, provided through a number of providers in the city. There are a handful of them that provide access in the city. We've outreached to them, and ultimately we would help to fund some component of that along with a number of other philanthropic partners. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. Thank you. Back to the violence prevention dollars at Department of Health. I was just curious as to whether the violence prevention outreach work is targeted at any age groups or if it's just broadly street outreach.
The age group that we've been focusing on is really from 16 and up, 15 and up, give or take. So definitely includes teens and adults. So we don't cut off at 24 or 26. We go beyond that. So it's whatever's needed.
Okay. And then and my last question, again, around this $333 million line item, or used to be 340, now I think it's 333, on the ongoing direct COVID-19 response costs. I think there's been a number of questions around that. I share some of the concerns about which departments, to what extent that money has been spent and will be spent. I believe the chairman mentioned that there was supposed to be a breakdown as of yet. I'm wondering if that's been sent as of yet.
I will be sharing my PowerPoint that goes into the different departments.
Reed, can I call you right back? I'm on a...
Mute yourself, Alderman Osterman.
Yes, so I will be sharing the PowerPoint that I went through, and I'm happy to list out the departments.
Very well, and just now that you're here, what's the bulk of that? Into which departments?
Fire, definitely is one of them. Is one of our highest amounts. I think the rest is really split across various. But fire, of course, with our EMS and all the runs that they were doing, definitely were all hands on deck, as well as OEMC.
Okay, that's it, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Rodriguez. Chairman Osterman?
Yeah, real quick, a number of my colleagues brought up CHA and concerns about their operations and vacancies and other things. It's my intention to have them come before the Housing and Real Estate Committee. They are under new leadership, and Tracy Scott is the new CEO of CHA. She was appointed in March and physically joined CHA in May in kind of the middle of the COVID crisis. So wanted to give her the ability to get into CHA and begin work before we brought her before the Housing and Real Estate. But I will let everyone know how we will proceed on that so that CHA gets our feedback. And I'll be working with members of the council. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Osterman. Good move. Alderman Ramirez Rosa, followed by Alderman Nitz.
Thank you, Chairwoman. My question is for Budget Director Park. So it appears that there's still a big question mark as to whether or not CRF funds will be used to pay for police salaries. Is that something that has been discussed internally by this administration? For example, if someone were a FOIA, would emails pop up talking about using funds from this discretionary fund to cover policing costs?
No. I mean, what these funds are, and the priority for the Coronavirus Relief Fund is to offset direct response costs. That is the number one, the reason we have it. So, to the extent that any department incurred costs that are eligible, right now these costs are on corporate. And, I know everyone heard the news yesterday that our shortfall is about to be is estimated to be 700 million. As we can get our COVID costs covered, that is my, primary goal. And that is what I would like to do. That is what the CRF money came to us for from the federal government. So to the extent that, whether we discussed excluding a single department, I have not had those conversations. What my team and I have done for the last 3 months is to just work with every single one of our departments to see what COVID costs have you incurred, because none of this was budgeted at all. So
Right.
as much as
The question wasn't, have conversations been had around excluding a certain department, but rather have conversations been had around including costs that CPD has incurred in this fund.
The conversations have been, as it has been with every department, is what costs have you incurred for COVID? And as so, what we are working on is, is it eligible for any type of reimbursement? So to
And
that
so
extent,
do you know of an amount right now, or does your office know of an amount right now that CPD has incurred that could be reimbursed or paid out of CRF?
from CRF, no. I mean, that's
No.
the full salary cost, and how do we justify whatever portion of it?
And I think to echo Alderman Laspada's point, we are hearing so much demand from our constituents for rental assistance, for housing relief. At the same time, we're also hearing, to spend less on policing. And so it's very difficult for me, it's important for me to be able to go back to my constituents and to go back to the people that elected me and say, we did not take away from things like rental assistance. We did not take away from things like relief in our community in order to pay for more policing. Is that a commitment that the administration could give us, that the CRF money will not go towards policing?
What I can commit to is that the CRF, one, will not take away from any of these investments that we've proposed today, and two, that any funding, if we were to put it on CRF, would be explicit to just COVID, and would have to be something that we could justify. So it would not be basic policing, it would not be any regular activity that they do, but it would have to be something that we could show was directly related to, any of the shelter in place or the COVID, requirements that we had.
Right, but as Alderman Laspada laid out, that could be enforcing the stay-at-home order, right? That could be going into parks and asking them to disperse. And so that is then a decision that's being made by the city to prioritize those types of policing activities as opposed to other forms of COVID-19 relief like rental assistance. So I'm not happy with that answer. I mean, I will say that, as of right now, I haven't heard a clear definitive yes that, this money that's being held in the CRF, is not going to go towards, the police.
Well, I think that's back to the original point that, again, I know your question was not meant to exclude anyone, but, my question was to all the departments is, have you incurred costs? And is there something that we can justify? Like, for example, other departments that we're working with, we know different people that were working on different things. Whether it was someone reassigned from DCASE, whether we have people reassigned from departments to do contact tracing. We have a lot of that information. So, to the extent that police is a little more difficult, to your question, I don't, part of this is all going to be documentation, and if that's going to be possible.
Chairwoman, if I may, I was also just going to reiterate a comment that one of the other aldermen made, that it is also very likely that we're going to see different costs as it relates to likelihood of resurgence coming over the next several months. Budget Director Park has mentioned that this money is meant to carry us through the end of the year, and we just don't know what that looks like at this point. So, we're trying to balance what is ultimately a lot of need in a lot of places. And if there is a resurgence, it's in all of our best interest to ensure we have the resources to be able to cover that.
Thank you. Alderman Rosa?
That ends my line of questioning. I would feel a lot more comfortable voting for this if we had a clear, commitment from the administration that as you look at the expenses moving forward through December 2020, that as decisions are being made in terms of staffing, that this money isn't going to be used to allow for additional policing, but that rather, this money could then be used to, maybe up other things like rental assistance and other forms of COVID-19 relief.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Mitts.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. This has been a busy day. We kind of feeding the community, and it takes me to and from trying to do two things at one time. I do want to mention in our community, Austin community, I think there are about 4 testing sites. And there's an area that is in a great need of allowing people to be tested. I thought we was working with the Department of Health, but no one came out at this point to set up a site for testing. And then I'm here passing dollars, and my community can't even get tested. So I don't have a problem with trying to help others, but I just know I need to be included in that so that we can help save some of the life. We're talking about the summer, I'm talking about right now. What we should have done already, so let's not forget, there's a large number of people who are dying in the area that are here every day, so I'm pleading with you again, if we have dollars for covert, that we set up something here to allow the people that he was talking about a pop-up, and I haven't heard any more back, so I'm still waiting to get that done. We set the location, and the team a little slow. I also want to just reiterate with all the money that's going out, some have been allocated where we're seeing a need, and it's a great need for South and West Side. When it comes to every item that you have on your budget, whether it's workforce, housing, small business, I can go on down the list and tell you that these services are needed now. I don't know how you allocate it. I know the funds that you have here, but how do they get distributed, and who distributes those funds, and where do they go to, so we can see what area that's being left out? I'm certainly concerned that this community that I represent that's been neglected for so long are in the front line to be able to receive some of these services.
Alderman Mitts, that question was asked in your absence, I think. Commissioner Morrison Butler said that in her department, she has a series of delegate agencies whose contracts she would look to extend. And Commissioner Arwady said that regarding contact tracing, she would get back to the group to talk about how she's looking at that in terms of the larger organization and the 30 smaller organizations that would then begin to hire people in the community. So I think we have an opportunity there to have some input.
Right, if they would get back with us on it. I do understand that the partners are utilizing funds and are trying to make it work, but we need to talk with some of the elected officials, some of the aldermen, to see what their needs and concerns are, rather than trying to use it the best way or who come first. There's a greater need, and we're struggling. Doing 2 or 3 things, trying to work here while you push your paper. We're all trying to clean up or feed or check with the business. It's a lot going on, and I want to make sure that we're not left out, even as I'm moving throughout my community when it comes to dollars and funding. And I need the commissioners. If I could get them all to call me, I'll tell them where I needed that. But it's easy for them to call me and me trying to call all of them. So that's what I wanted to say.
All right, thank you, Alderman Mitts. Appreciate your comments and questions. Alderman Thompson and Alderman Moore, if you very quick questions, I would appreciate it. Alderman Thompson and Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question. I know it was mentioned a few times about CHA. Susie, this isn't our jurisdiction, but was CPS grant given any money from here? Have they received any money for COVID?
They have received their own COVID grant, and I think you may have seen an original proposal, but we have pulled that, so they're not getting outside of the broadband initiative that we're working together. They're not in this budget.
Not as far as us, but they have their own allocation they already got.
Yes, they have. They received funds also from the CARES Act.
Okay, I'll talk with them. Thank you.
Thank you, and Alderman Moore to close.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just real quick, because somebody mentioned about the $700 million gap. Is that just operating? It's not part of structural? No. What's the number, if there's a number regarding pension? So what's the real number in terms of deficit? Is it that whole 700 million, or is that more? And does that 700 million take into account pension stuff?
The 700 million account pensions, our 2021 pension.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up a little. I'm sorry.
Jenny Bennett, the 700 million does include the pension costs. Our 2021 pension contribution is fixed, and so it does include those costs related to pensions.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. I just want to clarify that the first item on the agenda was adopted by the quorum roll call vote. I did not say that, and I just want to be clear legally. So is there a motion to recommend approval of item number 2 on the agenda by the same roll call vote that was applied to determine the quorum?
So moved by Alderman David Moore.
Moved by Alderman David Moore. Hearing no objections, so ordered. The due pass recommendation of this ordinance will be reported out at the next city council meeting on June 17th, 2020.
Chairman?
Who is that?
Alderman Ramirez Rosa.
Yes, Alderman Rosa. Is
this on the CARES Act money that we're voting now?
Yes, it is.
Yes, I'd like to be recorded as voting no.
Oh, such a surprise.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Likewise, Rodriguez.
Okay. There being no further business before the committee, can I get a motion to adjourn by the same roll call vote as was applied to determine the quorum?
Alderman Harris moved. So.
Thank you, Alderman Harris. Hearing no objections, so ordered, and the Committee on Budget and Government Operations is hereby adjourned. I hope everyone has a great afternoon.